So very good morning to everyone present here, all the organizers, our esteemed speakers and participants here. So I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, and her name is Professor Aarti Srivastava. She works in the Department of Higher Education, Higher and Professional Education, National Institute of Educational Planning and Administration. She has obtained her doctorate degree from JNU and her master's, and she holds a master's degree in both economics and education, and she has worked in premier research institutes such as Institute of Applied Manpower Research under the Planning Commission and V.V. Giri National Labour Institute, Ministry of Labour. Also worked at University of Delhi and BHU. She has closely contributed to the NCF 2005 NCRT World Social Science Curriculum. She has received funds from for projects from the Rockefeller project on South Asia, as well as being trained in IIEP Paris. Currently, she coordinates the National Resource Center for Education and LEAP, that is Leadership Program in collaboration with Oxford University UK and Howard University US. Professor Srivastava led the inner ministerial project with the Australian government and was a special invitee at the BRICS BRICS President Forum in China. Professor Srivastava is on the editorial board of several renowned index journals, apart from having published widely on issues or themes such as employability, gender, teaching, learning, and leadership in higher education. With this significant introduction to ma'am, I would now like to request ma'am to kindly begin with her insightful and engaging talk. So over to you, ma'am.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Very happy to be part of this very innovative program, which is for all the faculty members across the nation, East, West, North, South, as Professor Shruti just mentioned, I have been given the understanding that most of the participants here are from social science background, right? So can you put in the chat box how many are not from social science? I can't see any messages in the chat box. So I assume that all of you are from social science background, right? And how many of you have done your research, PhDs? If there are no answers on the chat box, then I assume that all of you have done a PhD. Right now, so I begin with a small joke, that was there in JNU when we were students, that we were struggling hard to do our research, toiling day and night, really finding ourselves in the complete mess of the situation, but, and getting a little frustrated also towards the end of our PhDs. But, our teachers would laugh and say that real research starts after PhD. And we would get even more infuriated on that and thinking that, we are struggling hard and they are just joking about it and saying that actual research actually starts after the PhD. Now, let's see why this statement was so true. And it hits me even today after completing, more than 20 years of completing that very enormous and humongous project. It's because, how we actually have, many of us have missed the wood on the trees, that how actually we start a research, how we do go about it, and how we actually come to conclusions. We somehow are able to fulfill the modalities of it and come to some kinds of, this thing. Some of us are able to achieve, in a more meaningful way. Some of us in a little less meaningful way, but nevertheless, the project gets completed, but still the wood on the trees gets missed, It's because, the weakness in the review of literature. Review of literature is something that is actually the core of research, because you're not searching, you're researching, you're searching through, given, modalities, and you're trying to come out with some new findings. So you have to first search and then, pose your own questions and then do a research. So that connection, is very, very important for us to understand. And review of literature actually begins at the conception stage of the PhD. When we think of doing a PhD, so what is it that we are looking for? What is the area that we want to work on? And those kind of questions, they start from there, and which actually gets addressed gradually and slowly through the review of literature. So review of literature, we at the conception level, we begin with the review of literature, and we towards the end, the last part, till the last we are struggling and we keep adding the literature. So this is one thing which goes on and off over a period of time, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever time you are able to take and internalize this whole process of research. But then how it is to be done is seldom taught to you. You are asked to review. Most of the teachers, professors would come and, okay, you come with the literature. But what exactly we need to examine in the literature, cull it out and put it up front, is something that is almost never taught to us. In fact, one of the, some lady who was, must have been my much senior, about 5-10 years senior to me. She could not do, she could not complete her PhD. And therefore, she, much later in life, after raising a family, she came and she said that, you help me do a PhD. So I said, okay, show me your review of literature. So she had written things, but not in the way it was supposed to be internalized and written. So then I told her another way, and she said, nobody ever told me this. And she was a bright student. She said, nobody ever told me how to actually write it. So that, that trick of the trade, I will tell you towards the end. But, you need to understand that, you have to begin, with the review and end with the review. Other things will just fall in place, So that is something that is very, very significant about review of literature. And that is why when Professor Shruti, she asked me that, what do you want to really, deal with? I thought, let me plug in this gap. Let me plug in this gap, because this thing is never ever taught to any student across. My students actually, when I have tried it out during their MPhil and PhD, they have been really benefited, and they feel after doing this exercise and writing their own thoughts, through this process, they feel really empowered, and they feel very, very, blessed to be, working under me. So that the thing. So, when you start with the research process, you have an area. You may be a sociologist, a political scientist, whatever field that you're working on, even multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. So there is a theme that you want to work on. You want to work on either caste, you want to work on labor markets, you want to work on gender, and so on and so forth. So you start reading on that subject, whatever your subject is, right? Through that lens. So gender can be, seen from different lenses, but you will, supposing you are from sociology, so you have to pick up the gender lens and see the literature on gender, right? So once you start reading, then within gender, you will find, that you're yourself getting, more attracted to a certain part of gender. Is it the, the financing, that is, empowering, the finance, or your jobs, which is empowering? Or is it, the background that you belong to and you are getting empowered? Is it a homogeneous category, heterogeneous category? What exactly you want to pick in from these kind of issues? You start actually getting narrowed down to that, right? Once you start getting narrowed down to that, then you start, from that perspective, you start, assimilating the literature. Right? So you start collecting the literature. Supposing it is, labor market and gender, or any other example, democracy and the party system, or say, education and, labor market, whatever it is, when you narrow down, you start collecting the literature, right? So it begins with a wide reading of that particular field and ends up, with specific readings. Once you have the specific readings therein, then what is it that you're supposed to do? You are supposed to, identify the topic, the topic that you would be, tentative topic that you would be actually working on. So you don't get the exact topic there, but you start getting a sense of the topic that you would be working on. So you, through the literature, you first arrive at a tentative topic. It's not the real topic, but it's the tentative topic. And then you read through the research and take your own notes. What is it important? And while you're taking the notes, what exactly do you really want to really get from those notes is, you start making, you make, from serial number 1. Supposing for arriving at a tentative topic, you need to at least go through 25 books and articles, right? It's a tentative number. There is no fixed number, but around, you need to, substantive literature is what I want to tell you. So once you go through that, you need to first, make a table, table in the sense that, you need to have, that, okay, this is the topic, right? So serial number 1, the topic, the title of the book or the title of the article that you have. Then you need to, in column number 2, you can put down the objectives of that particular book or that particular topic, right? So why was this book written? What were the objectives? So what were the objectives of the research article or the research book that you were that you were reading through, right? Then you discuss, the methodology that is used in the book or in the article, right? So these 3 things, you need to cull these out. First the objectives, then, the methodology, right? So you cull out these things and name them 1, 2, 3, 4. The methodology could be, descriptive, exploratory, whatever the methodology is there, you need to say that. Then after that, you need to put, what were the results, right? And then the last and the most important part is that, do you think there is a matching between the all 3 above? The objectives, the methodology used, and the results, or there is some disconnect there. So if there is a disconnect, you write. If you think it is coherent enough, you write that, right? And then in the last column, which is the most important, and the thing is that you write, if you would have done that research, how differently you would have approached it, right? Would you have reframed the objectives? Would you have reframed the methodology? Would you have, your results? Of course, can't say your results could be the same, could not have been the same, or with a different methodology and a different approach, you could have got some different results. So your thinking on that particular subject, you need to put it in the last column, right? And then go theme wise, because then you have to go, collect these kind of articles, right? And make a list of at least 20, 25, the more the merrier, but minimum, about this number. And once you have these in place, then you get a sense of, what is the right methodology to, the theme that you have tentatively put as your topic to really explore. What is it? Are you really able to do that, or are you not able to do that? So is that methodology enough, or you think you could, doing that research method course, you could have done it differently? Now, one thing that is, very important here to understand is that when the research methodology is taught in MPhil classes or master's classes, they always tell you step 1, 2, 3, 4, like a recipe. Put this, and the dish is ready. It's not ever like that. In research, it's always a pendulum process. It's a simple harmonic motion, that you go 2 steps forward and 4 steps backward. You think and then you rethink, and then you rethink with a different, approach. So it is one step forward and 2 steps backward. So you go ahead and then you come back and you revisit. So it is always, going up and down, up and forward and backward linkages. So it is always like that until the last. Also, before submitting, also you sometimes want to make changes even in the introductions, even in the review chapters and rest of it. So it is always a back and forth movement that research really encourages, and that is the way to do it. It's not a recipe 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've done step 1. Now I can go to step 2. I can go to, so after step 3, you can come back to 1, 2, 4 ke baad you can come back to 2 and 3, and so on and so forth. So it's always, forward and backward things that you need to really work around. So that really good. So here you need to understand that, once you have done this tentative, collection of the literature, then you need to sort it out, and you need to really place it, in the way that is wanted. So, when you organize your literature review, then you need to really see that, the place each work in the context of its contribution and understanding to the research problem being studied. Place each work in the context, that, if something is on, sub themes of that, you disaggregate your literature. So place each work in the context of its contribution to understanding the research problem being studied. Then describe the relationship of each work to the other under consideration. They should be interlinkages. They should not be standalone. They should never be standalone kind of things where, you work around that, right? So they should never be standalone. There are always interlinkages that you need to work upon. That what is the linkages? Having said this, what is the next part? Having said this, what is the next part? Identify new ways to interpret the prior research. The research that you are undertaking, that you are studying, try to look for a new dimension, that can actually add value to your own research. To try to interpret it in a different way. Probably the author has said this, but it can be seen in this new light also. So you have to look at, in a new context, to give it a new meaning in that research. Then from here, you say, what are the gaps that exist in literature? Now you've gone through substantive literature. Now you say that, the literature has, it has all these things, X, Y, Z kind of things. But what is it that is missing? So what are the gaps? So review of literature is done essentially through this method to find out any gaps that exist in literature. So you have to identify the gaps that exist in the literature. Then there can be many contradictions in when some authors are saying that this is increasing, others authors saying that no, it's in a status quo. Some authors may say that it is increasing. So now you need to put it in your mind here to say, how do you resolve this conflict? Despite them saying increasing, but if we fit them into a timeline, we will see a substantial decrease, or whatever your argument. So you have to settle the conflicts therein, and to make your review more powerful, right? Then identify areas of prior scholarship to prevent duplication of their efforts. Then when you also do this, you try to see that what are the things that are being done, and even if you are doing it again, you need to see that they are not mere duplications, but what is the reason for them to be reworked on after a certain substantial gap of time, or the context changing, or another rationale that you can come out with. Right? Then point the way in fulfilling a need of additional research. So you need to say that, okay, these things have been taken up, these things are missing, but despite all these things, having certain influence on your research, what is the need for your research? That rationale, why are you really, doing that research, is something very, very important. So the strong the rationale is, the better, it shows your review of literature. If you can build a rationale, that shows itself that your review of literature is really good, right? And locate your own research within the context of existing literature, right? So now what you need to do is that, you need to put your research in the context of your review of literature. This is per se the review of literature chapter that you need to really put in. So when you tabulate, what happens is that when we are reading, this is the practical part of it. We read something, right? Then we read another thing and 3-4 articles. So by the time we are over with the 4th article, what happens is the first one, is out of a memory, because, learning also is accompanied by a process of de-learning. So we constantly de-learn. So whatever we are learning, we are de-learning also. So by the time the 4th article is there, so you have missed, many things that were there in the 1st article. But if you note it down in the way that, I have tried to organize, that helps you, making a complete a chart, which helps you, bring out the relevant points of the review of literature. It could be, the literature could be, when you're reviewing, it can go from 25 to 50 also, but it is all there, serially fixed and serially done, right? So that helps you, put everything and not forget many of the things that you have done through your literature. Now, your literature review can have certain types, types of literature review, right? One can be argumentative, right? You need to build an argument. So this form examines literature selectively in order to support or refute an argument deeply embedded in assumptions of philosophical problem already established in the literature. Like, I'm sure, through other things, I had, some sense of what went on. So theoretical, conceptual framework, all this, I'm sure you've done that. So, this, you have to, the philosophical problem is there, and it is already through the literature that you have this. So you need to build an argument for and against the assumptions that you have been posed through philosophy, right? Another form of literature review can be integrative, right? So you need to integrate many the other kinds of research that is taking place, right? Considered a form of research that reviews, critiques, synthesizes, representing literature on the topic. So you need to have critiques of the theme that you're working on, and the synthesis of it, the representation to the literature and all that. So when you integrate all this in your own review, then it gives you a holistic understanding, in a new framework and perspectives of the topic that are generated. So the body of literature includes all studies that address related or identical hypothesis or research problem, or that is there. So you can have an integrative where you have, you can integrate all kinds of, for, against, critiques, representations and all of them get into one kind of framework, and that is the framework that you use, and that can be the integrative framework. Next would be a little historical. The historians generally use this. We all use this kind of review, because nothing can be ahistorical. So everything that we do has a historical framework. So few things rest in isolation from historical precedent. So no ahistorical work. Historical literature reviews focus on examining research through a period of time. When we look at economics, we see decadal change, previous century to this century, the pre-independence to post-independence. So, we often, starting from the time of issue, concepts, theory, phenomena emerged in the literature, then tracing it to the evolution within the scholarship, right? If you talk about, something like, Marxian framework. So we look back right from the beginning of Marx, and then we try to locate, historically, the theme that we are trying to research on. So that can be there, right? So then we also can have another way of looking at things, that is methodological. A review does not always focus on what someone said as finding, but how they came and saying to that. That's what I said in my this thing, that when you make a column, you also examine the methodology. So reviewing the methods of analysis. So when you're reviewing those 25 or 50 articles, and when you see different methods, you also arrive, which method seems to be better for that research. And also, within the basket of research methods, what could be a good method for your research? So I think that really will be a good answer. So doing methods for analysis provides a framework for understanding at different level those of theory, substantive fields, research approaches, and data collection, analysis techniques, how researchers draw upon a wide variety of knowledge ranging from conceptual level to practical documents for the use of fieldwork in the area of ontological and epistemological consideration, quantitative, qualitative, integration, sampling, interviewing, data collection, data analysis. The approach helps highlight ethical issues which you should be aware of and consider as you go through your own study, right? So this actually, you need to really, exert yourself a little bit on saying, what are the methodologies that are available, what kind of methodologies have been used for which kind of research in order to get, substantive findings, and whether they actually fit in that whole slot or not. And then what is that alternatively that you can use for, your own research. So that way, when you go through the column on methodologies, when you go through, different kinds of research that your methods that are used, you are also able to conceptualize the one that will suit your research the best. Then next is, something that, is there, is a very, this thing called systematic, framework. This form consists of an overview existing evidence pertinent to a clearly formulate research questions, So when you systematically piece this thing, then you are systematically able to formulate your research questions, your objectives, being, with the set of data that you have actually created through the review of literature. And last but not the least is the theoretical. The purpose of this form is to examine the corpus of theories that has accumulated in regard to an issue, concept, theory, phenomena. The theoretical literature review helps to establish what theories already exist, the relationships between them, and what degree of existing theories have been investigated, and to develop new hypotheses to be tested. Often this form is used to help establish a lack of appropriate theories or reveal that current theories are adequate for explaining new or emerging research problems. The unit of analysis can focus on the theoretical concepts of the old theory of framework, right? So that, you need to, pitch the theory part also, like through the literature, what are the major theories that have come up, how many of them have been investigated, what is left to be investigated, on what new, through your research, how new hypotheses that you can formulate, which can help answer something new in the offing. You could come out to be, really, seeing new parts of the theory itself, right? So, I mean, now seeing that, these are the types that can help you do the literature, and all these types can fit into the table that you are making. So, when you're writing the review of literature, you can also summarize when you are writing your own points, that what is the framework that you're using. You're using an argumentative framework or an integrative framework, historical, methodological, systemic, theoretical, and so on and so forth. So you can also say that and justify, the way that you are reviewing the literature. Now, structure and writing style, that is also very important. The structure of a literature review should include the following in support of understanding the research problem. But before, I go on to the next part of review of literature, I hope I'm making sense to you all. And despite you people having done literature review, I hope you are getting, what were the missing gaps, that you have not really addressed, you had not really, addressed till now. Missing the wood on the trees, so I hope you can see the wood on the trees now, and not only the green part. Is that making sense? Okay. So if it is very, okay, so then I can go to the next part. See, the structure of review, should include and follow in support of understanding of the research problem, an overview of the subject issue or theory under consideration, along with objectives of the literature review. So an overview, what is, in general, this article or this book is really talking about. So having a little bit of understanding, that should go in, as an introduction to the review, that what is the subject really talking about. Then you have to, the division of work under review into themes and categories. So when you have completed the table that I was talking about, you have to now actually divide them thematically, right? That even among, say, empowerment of women, some can be, rural women, some can be urban women, some can be highly educated women, some can be lowerly educated. Then based on, so different kinds of themes will emerge when you are reviewing the literature. So you need to, through that literature, you've got different themes. So now you need to disaggregate them and divide them works that support a particular position and works that do not support the a particular position, and within that various themes, and then you go on to say that this urban studies is supporting, or rural studies are not supporting, so on and so forth, or caste wise or education wise, what is really supporting and what is not supporting. So you can do a division, a thematic division of the review of literature in order to finally, bring the larger picture in place, right? So that you need to do. And then, explain how each works similar to and how it varies from the other. You have to see where they are converging and where they are really diverging, right? So that you need to say, the points of convergence, points of divergence have to be very explicitly brought about here when you are doing the literature, right? Then, of course, you need to make a little conclusion here as to which pieces are the best considered for your argument and are convincing of their opinions and make the greatest contribution to understanding and development of the area of research. So you need to now, within the themes, you now need to make conclusions that which are the major articles which are making, substantial contribution to the theme that you are researching. So critical evaluation of each work should consider, how they were able to prove, the methodology, the objectivity, the persuasiveness and the validity, right? So within this, you can have, reliability and validity. Validity is a must for any research because, what you are researching, should be valid because it should be able to align, your results should always align to the objectives. The matching, every examiner tries to see, when we get, a thesis to examine, we see that, that what you set out to do, were you able to really, your, last chapters when you're writing into, are they aligned or not? And are they valid enough? Because if you are, objectives are something else, your conclusions are different, that means your research is invalid and really not worth it, right? So, basically, more important among all other, things are, more important in research is to do a valid piece of research with interconnections. What you are arguing, the theme of your research. Yes. Is there any question?
Please mute yourself.
Any question? I am very, open to any questions if you have any.
There are questions that have been put in the chat box. Am I right, Asta? Dr. Asta?
Okay, I can see. Let's make this session interactive. Kindly post questions. Yeah, Asta is written down. Yes.
पुनीत जी, म्यूट कीजिए जिन लोग जिनके माइक ऑन है.
मैम ये श्वेशा जी सिंह जी मैम.
Swesha, please mute. Dr. Swesha, please mute yourself.
Ma'am, this is a participant called Suyasha Singh.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
पुनीत जी वो difference देख लीजिए. Sorry, Dr. Aarti, there was some. I think that there's a confusion to the names. Yeah.
There is a question. Yeah, ma'am, how do you finalize the methodology? Now, I mean, if you can just indicate what are you researching on? Okay, you are, the gig workers, Okay, so, if you want, so look at, method, you have to go through the literature, on this kind of economy or workers, and try to see, which are the research, sociological study of gig workers. Okay, so you're doing a sociological study. So, you have objectives, right? So, you must have trained some objectives. Now, with those objectives, you go through, various literature. I said is minimum 25, so you look at all the literature and see what in that literature, in those 25 articles, people have used the methodology, right? And try to see that from your own framework, which methodology has got out the best results, and is that methodology suitable for fulfilling those objectives or not? You have to do the thinking. You are a painter. I can't tell you the colors. You have to imagine your own colors to put in. Whether you juxtapose blue and yellow, or yellow and orange is your way. So you have to, for the methodology, you have to see what has, when you were doing your review, what were the objectives which were matching with yours, and which kind of methodology could bring out the best results from the theory that you have really used, right? So once you have that idea, then you can use exactly the same methodology, or you can, use a better methodology, or, mixed methodology in order to get out, mixed methodology, as you've written, so mixed methodology, to get out this thing. Because many times, the quantitative and qualitative research, the two kinds of research, have their own merits and demerits. Quantitative can give you much, much on the surface, but qualitative can go deep down and, cull out many of the nuances, what has come out from the surface. So both are equally important, and therefore, if you want to use the mixed methodology, that could be okay. That what you're using. So you have to see, every researcher has to come out with their own methodology. There is no single answer to the question. Many a times, students come to us. They say, "Ma'am, what should we research on?" I said, this, no teacher should be telling this also. In many of the state universities, teachers tell them, you work on this topic, right? That's a very wrong way of approaching it. The researchers should come with, the topic by themselves, what they are interested in. And when they are able to find out their interest through the reading, then they are able to really come down to what are the issues there. And then only, they can start with a good review, and they can answer and frame good objectives, try to analyze the methodologies used, try to see what methodologies are there, and try to see, how newly and how they can recreate, the research in a much better way. Light on models. I didn't get your question. What do you want to see? Models. So if you are using models in your research, you need to analyze. You are talking about the economic models, the logic probit model. Is that what you're asking? Yes, sir. Okay, yeah. So you see, which model is suitable for the kind of your research. Why do you want to use so there are many models, so you need to actually use, you have to really be insightful enough to know which kind of models you think. And model you will actually make, once you do your research. Modeling is the last part of the research, that you try to fit into a model, so you can work on the equations, and towards the end you can come out with a good model. So you use your descriptive statistics, then you do your, inferential statistics. After the inferential statistics, when you have the results, then you try to put it in a model. It could be, the Amica model that you're talking about. You can also use, any of the other models that we use in economics, many of them, right? So yeah, the research, I saw it in the research paper. So the modeling actually comes towards the last. And you can also, in your table, when you're doing the review of literature, you can also see the models being used. This is the modeling is done, mostly by the economists. So you can also see the models, and you can also see the fit of the modeling. If when you see the model, you see that if that model is actually answering the objectives of your particular research. The alignment to your the objectives is what is the success of the model, and how it can really be replicated. So that can be done. So yes, you can look at the model in the review of literature. You can also use the models used, and why X model was better than the model. Also, I've had students who have worked on Mincerian equation, right? So the Mincerian equation, but the way they have analyzed, so they have gone ahead to say that it's the same equation, but how they have analyzed through Machado, Matito, all those kind of new ways of interpreting the old equations. So that, of course, has to be, substantiated through the literature. In the literature, when you see that, which kind of equations are being talked about, you are using secondary data, you are doing that, and then you are coming out with a model. So the models and all are the last part of it, but that also has to be reviewed and seen which are the ones that have been worked on, which are the ones that are better with answers your objectives, and which are the ones that you can probably use, or you can make, towards the end, you can make your own model also, right? So you don't have to use a given model, you can come out with your own modeling also. Does that answer your question? I don't know the name of the person who posted that question. Does that answer your question? Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'm happy. Yeah. So any other questions? Any other questions you can put on the chat box? It's very interesting because, review is something that is, A to Z of that of research. Once you know how to do research, you will be able to critique, you will be able to theorize, you will, so many things through good review of literature. And that is, the power of, that actually puts the fuel in your back to actually make your car running. So if there are no questions, we can go ahead, say that, what are some of the issues that you need to really dwell on before you do, when you're engaged in research, right? So the following, we need to really look at, that, clarity, if your assignment is not specific about what form of literature review it should take, seek clarification from your a senior or a professor, that, you should be able to see that, what specifically are you trying to look at, right? You have to map it out. In one go, you cannot master this whole art of reviewing. So, what specifically you need to really call out from the literature, you should seek the guidance of some seniors or, people who are really ahead of you doing that research. Roughly how many sources to include, again, is a question that is, totally on the kind of, some of the topics which are very new, do not find much literature in your own context or even in the international context. So how many sources is again there, but yes, you should have a good enough number, because the more you review, the more idea you have about the research that you're about to undertake. So that is, I think, the answer to the question that many of the researchers haven't. Then many times you find that people just summarize. They just summarize what the researchers have said. Now, summary is not, I would not say that I'm getting disconnected again and again with the network. Kindly excuse me. Okay, that's up to you whether you want to listen or not. That's perfectly your choice. What happens is that many a times we see that, review of literature, you ask the students to do a review of literature, they will go to 20 and they will make a summary of them. Even for book review, you tell them, that you do a book review, most of the people will come with a summary of the book. Chapter 1 says this, chapter 2 says that. That's not exactly the way how to do a review. Even a book review or an article review or a review of literature. Review means your critical inputs. When you're reviewing, it is your critical inputs that are very important. Like many of my students, they come out with a book. I said, no, for a book review, you need to first go through 5 different important works in that field for you to have an understanding of, what the book is. Because unless and until you have a larger context there, how would you put the book into that? You have to pitch your book in order to, say that whether it is a good book or a not book. Then once you have the larger context in place, and when you're reviewing the book, then you know that the book is, additional information or is a repeat information. The methodology that the book has used, whether it is a good methodology or it is, the routine methodology, or, even the, the conclusions that the book has given, are they the ones that are repeated or the ones that are new? So first, in the larger context, you pitch your book. And then analytically, not chapter by chapter, but the themes that are there, the important themes in the book, you write that whether, some new information has been created or not created. So you go ahead with that. And then you're able to say, everybody ends with a line. There is a must read, a non book, not to be missed by any of the readers. What kind of readers? There are all kinds of readers. I read novels, and also I read my own books related to my profession also. So which kind of reader? There are different kinds of readers. They can be very serious researchers. They can be simple researchers who just are beginners. Then they can be non-researchers also. So whom are you really giving a good hope to? So those things are there. So you need to have a larger context. What are the things that are expected before writing a book chapter? Okay, I will get back to that. What are the things that are expected before writing a book chapter? Yes, I'll get back to that. So, so in a book review, you have to read. Similarly, when you write an article review, you need to read at least, few more articles before you can, review the article that has been assigned to you, given to you, or you have opted to do that. So you read a larger category of those kind of articles to say whether that article is really worthy of reading or not reading. So that you need to really figure that out. Figure it out yourself. So when you add also, a summary, which is also something like an annotated bibliography. Giving a summary will not take you far, because unless and until it is pitched in the larger landscape and also connected, every line, I tell my researchers that every line you write, when you are writing a thesis, you don't get haywire. Put the title of your PhD in front of you in bold letters. So everything that you're writing, should actually relate to that in some other way. They should be interconnected. So whatever you're writing should be interconnected. Then there should be an interconnection with the title of your thesis, between chapters, between paras, how it is ultimately. So structuring, as we say, is very, very important. And that I will say, what are the things that are expected before start writing a book chapter? So book chapter, when you start writing, what do? You have a title in your mind, then you say that, okay, right from introduction to, what are the important themes? What are you trying to argue? So you try to first structure out in your chapter, right? So of course, we begin with a short introduction. Then you say that, okay, supposing I take an example of, say, Indian higher education, right? That all of you are part of, and you will be able to understand. And that is why I'm taking, supposing you have to write a chapter on Indian higher education. So Indian higher education, introduction, what is higher education, right? What is so specific about the Indian higher education? Is it really worthy, not worthy, and how is it got to connect with its historical past, right? So Indian higher education, you write something on that, right? So this is your first introductory chapter, higher education, Indian higher education. Then you come down to say that, okay, what is the size? So we write about the size. There are more than 1,000 universities, more than 45,000 colleges. Then the types of universities, central to state to deemed universities, and so on and so forth. So the kinds of universities, the kinds of colleges, then we write about that. And then we try to say, what does that size really mean to Indian higher education? So you come back to your title, you're talking about the size, but you come back to your title and say, what does that size have to do with Indian higher education? It's too, probably I would conclude, that this is a very, very huge size, and something that is infathomable, and, something that is very, very large and has, so many elements that cannot be, come down to one single homogeneous category. It's too heterogeneous, too spread out, and maybe sometimes it even does not serve the purpose because of the massification, right? Then of course, after the size, you say the types. Then you say, what is there, in terms of access. In access, what do we have? Is everybody able to access higher education? No, because the GER in higher education is only 27.3%. We are at the first stage of massification, but we want to be 35% by the year, by certain, after a decade or something. But right now we are only 27.3% the GER. So next is that, access is not there. Is it equitable? access equity, then a little bit on financing, a little bit on quality, governance and management. So that is the way you try to structure out your chapter. These are the important issues in higher education, right? Quality, nowadays, of course, there's integration of ICT. We're all interacting on the virtual mode. So ICT becomes very, very important. So ICT, integrate, how do we integrate ICT in higher education, right? So Indian higher education, a rough introduction, right? Then we equity, quality, governance, this thing, and maybe how do we improve? So good leadership, so we add. So in your chapter, I'm trying to answer your question, that when you draw a chapter, first try to structure it out, a rough chapter. What is it that, and what is it that I want to convey to the students, that convey to the readers of the book. So Indian higher education, we will be able to convey to the readers of this chapter that, Indian higher education is very large in size. It is very diversified, in terms of structure. It is not well governed. It is not equitous. It is low on quality. Financing is an issue. Leadership is an issue. So, roughly a chapter, the size of the chapter, on an average, a good publisher, Routledge or Sage or Springer expects about something between 15 to 20 pages of the chapter, including the bibliography. So that is, how you make a chapter outline. That this is the theme and what do I want to convey to the reader, and in between what can be the possible themes. Does that answer your question about the chapter? And when you write a research, you want to back it up with research, you can have, data tables from iShape, you can have data tables from UGC, you can have data tables from the Ministry of Education. These are three major sources for your data. Also, you can add, in your other kinds of research, you can have some, good articles, that are there in the literature on higher education, and back it up with evidence. Once you structure it out, then you look for those articles and you back it up with evidence, and all those get contained in your bibliography, right? So that answers your question. So, I come back, that, you need to have, you need to clarify. Then, when you clarify, you need to find out more sources, so sources, and then you narrow down the sources to be exactly, what can be there, in the thing. Also, try to be, fit into a chronology. If your reviews have, you pick up an article from, say, 1980, and then you come to 2023, then you go back again to 1999. So that gives you very haphazard. So try to also, one important point is to put your articles also in the chronology, rough. It's not have to be exactly a chronological order, but by and large, it should not, it should be also mindful of the timeline that is. So the approach should only be followed for a clear path in research building and previous research, so that, in terms of pathways, it is clarity that, what follows the previous one. And so this thing. So also you have to, when you write, you also have to look at the current situation, right? So information is necessary. So information necessary to understand the current topic of focus of literature review. So, you need to have, you look at to have the current situation. So how many colleges are there right now? How many universities are there right now? And to understand the current topic, so you back it up, all the necessary information in the current scenario. Then sources that you are using, so describes, you also need to describe the method and the resources that you have used, how many kinds of data sources that you're using. Why are you using the selection of methods? You have to also put in the rationale of the selection of methods, of course, you also need to put, see that, how in the limited way you are actually finding out your, the findings are there, and what are the questions for further research. how do you say that one? Also very important is, that what are the, policy briefs, because every research is certain relations, and that should feed into the policy. So how do you make a policy briefs of your findings, and that, those policy briefs, and then those policy briefs also need to be disseminated, because many of the researches that we do, whether, a PhD or a post PhD projects, international, national, unless and until they become, briefs to be disseminated, then, that really does not take us far, because that then is only, additional to the shelves of the bookshelves that are there in our libraries or our homes. So that, that we should be very, very mindful of, that the policy briefs have to be disseminated. So, just a minute. Yeah. So, is it getting clear to you? What are the some kinds of things that we had missed out, and what are the things that we need to plug in? So this is very, very important. How to structure a chapter, how to structure, a review, how to structure, an article, and how to and there are ways. One of the things, one of the units that we had originally put in our research methodology course was communicating research. In that communication, the same research can be communicated. If you have a commissioned report, then you have to follow the guideline of the person who has commissioned the report. If it is your independent research, you have the liberty to actually give it a structure that you want to. If it is under, if it's a PhD, then, you need to follow the statutes and the, the rules that are given in your university, compendium. Also, if you're doing an ICSR project, you have to follow the rules of ICSR and whoever the funding agency is. And if you are writing an article for a journal, you have to look at the guidelines and the style sheet from the editor of the journal. So, communicating research, the same research can be communicated in very many different ways. And that is, something that every researcher should be mindful of. And also, when you are writing a research, one thing that is very important is that break out of your disciplinary box. Discipline, yes, but, disciplinary box, we need to break out. Thinking of interdisciplinary research about, a research problem, because every social phenomena is backed by many, many other things. So if you really get stuck only with your discipline, then probably, many things, that can be more rewarding gets contained. So about that rewarding exercise in applying new ideas, theories, and concepts to an old problem. So if you use, from interdisciplinary point of view, you get always better results, and that is why the NEP 2020 is actually talking about multidisciplinarity right from undergraduate level. So you need to organize your ideas. You need to have the methods in place. You need to have your theories and, your support conclusions in place. And that will, once those things are, formed up, then what happens, once you have the table there, which you are working on, then what you need to do is then, across, you have to go around and pick up, analyze, and put this thing in your own words. Because, nothing should be, because you are actually talking from the point of view of the literature that is already there. So when you write the same thing in your own words and not paraphrasing and critically writing it, that, you can draw connections across the table that you have made, then, that is, the review of literature that will be more acceptable, more recognized, more appreciated, by your fellow colleagues and from your seniors. So that is very important, that the content, communication, cognition, and other factors are well in place to help you, do a good research. So and this keeps going on, once you've done the review of literature, or the chapter on reviews when you are arguing for the, from the from the point of view of, the statement of the problem, and putting the context of your research to a separate chapter which only talks about review, to methodology, because methodology also you can have, newer methodologies that have emerged. So again, you add on to that. Also, in your analysis and your summarization and your, conclusions and all that. So, the review goes on, maybe, you're doing a research and there is some new research literature that has come, after 2 years of your writing the review literature. And that's a very seminal chapter, a chapter or an article. So you add it on. So this keeps going out till the time your thesis is bound and submitted, or your project report is bound and submitted. Till that time also, even sometimes it happens that, even when we submit it, then we write it addendum. Sometimes, what we missed out and something. So when at the time of Viva, or in the time, if it's a published, it's gone for publication, you write an addendum to add that, this research, this review actually was done with this context, but, these are some additional readings, which imply this, and I would like to fit into the research that I have submitted. So, an addendum also helps, so in that addendum is also backed by review of literature, right? So this is an ongoing process which goes on. Also, it gives you ideas for your postdoctoral work, and also your hands-on research that you do in your professional life. So this keeps going on, and reading and analytical reading of any article or any book actually never ends. It becomes a habit, and a lifelong habit. So with that, I end my formal lecture, and I open the floor for any more questions that you have.
Thank you, Dr. Arti. I guess, Dr. Asma, if there are any questions?
I'll just check, ma'am. There are no questions. So, ma'am, I have one comment to make.
Yes.
So, ma'am, when we talk about literature review, and you said that it's beyond just summarizing a concept or a theme. So, ma'am, don't you feel it should actually also be called critical review? Because what we are doing is we are trying to maybe in a way evaluate and decide what has to be done and what has to be left. So in this context, because we in a way evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of an article's proposed ideas or concepts. So here we are in a way even reflecting in a critical manner as to what should I include and what should I exclude, basically. So don't you feel there is this critical essence more in literature review?
Yes, this whole exercise of research is critical. That's an undergrid, in the, when we say review of literature, it means critical review of literature. So whatever we are saying, because when you add on, you also need to know what is not there, right? So when we, it's understood that the critical part is there throughout. It's a running theme in research. So whether you call it upfront or in a subtle way, it means the same. So yes, I agree with you. It has to be very critical.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am, for your valuable lecture. It was very insightful and engaging because all of us are lifelong learners. We are teachers and researchers and students. So, ma'am, here are a few takeaways that I've noted through your from your lecture. First is that, ma'am, you focused on the importance of asking questions and how that's our main base for research. And you also talked about the various advantages, or maybe we can say how you talk about the main foundation of research. And you talked about the way it provides texts, it informs about the research methodology, it maximizes innovation. And yes, you also spoke about the structure of review, the philosophical, ethical, historical reviews, and other realms as well. So with this, ma'am, your lecture was highly valuable and insightful. So thank you so much for joining, and looking forward to listening to more lectures from you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Asta and Professor Shruti, for having given me this opportunity. I really enjoyed because every time you take a lecture, you revise your own thoughts.
Thank you so much, Professor Aarti. I know we were just discussing yesterday. You're under the even though you're on a leave, you're still coming to the office and working. And
Yes.
despite all the the work that you have taken time out and delivered this session for us. We are indeed grateful to you, and we hope and we look forward to further similar such opportunities in which we can call you and we can take up such meaningful discussions as you have done today. So thank you, Professor Aarti, once again for taking time out and delivering this session.
Thank you so much. Okay, bye-bye. I'm open to any questions. You can email to me, or maybe you can share your number. I'll be very happy to answer any of the questions that you have in mind.
All right. I hope all the participants are listening. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. Asta, you may share we still have some time before the next speaker comes. You may share the feedback link.
Yes, ma'am, sharing in a couple of minutes.
Thank you. All the participants, please note the feedback link will be shared. You're requested to kindly fill it up. And as I've mentioned previously also, and I repeat, only those attendees quiz and feedback will be accepted. Those who have attended the sessions. All right. Non-attendees will not be able, their quiz and the feedback will not be counted. So please ensure that you've attended and then given the feedback, as well as taking the quiz. So thank you.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Good morning, Professor Sheetal. Good morning. You can share. I think the feedback link has been shared by Dr. Asta. Please, all of you, quickly fill the feedback. We have our next professor in line who will be taking the session. Dr. Sheetal, I just saw you right now.
Okay.
We can't see you.
No, I'm waiting. I'm there.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Very much there.
Fine. Oh,
Good morning, ma'am.
we still have time.
Good
5
morning.
minutes we still have.
Okay.
It's your show, so you can join in any time.
Sure. I just came from a class at 11:30, so I just thought that I should not look thoroughly exhausted before I begin my next journey.
No, that's okay. We still have time. Then you can join in at 11:45, and then we will start the session at 11:45.
I was just worried about the link. Sometimes it does not
Yes.
function at that time, so I thought it's better
That's
to
true.
join 5 minutes in advance.
Yeah. Good morning, Sheetal.
Good morning. Good morning.
So we had the first session of Professor Aarti at 10:30 a.m. And now we have your session, and then post lunch we have Professor Shweta Prasad who will be joining in the session. And meanwhile, we are conducting, as I've informed earlier, feedback and quiz at the end of the day.
Okay.
And, so yesterday we had the inaugural session. You were there. Today we are on the second day of our FDP.
Okay. And participants are like encouraging numbers.
If you see, yeah, 68 participants. 67. I can see.
10 of us
Yesterday
are
also we had 65. We had 65 participants. So the participants are mainly PhD scholars, young academicians, young professors, young from different across. From I've seen the participants are from north, south, east, west.
Okay.
So across we have participation. This is basically the benefit of the online mode that we have. Yeah. So people who are genuinely interested are able to join. And as I've mentioned to all the participants, it is mandatory to be there on all the 6 days of the FDP. The attendance has to be 90%. Then only attendance will be.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
And they need to fill in the quiz and the feedback. Without that, only attendees quiz and feedback will be counted. Non-attendees quiz and feedback will not.
Okay.
So that is
And this is
Yes.
interdisciplinary, like we
Yes, yes,
all
we
process.
have. This morning, in fact, Professor Aarti was asking the same thing. Are they from social science? I said they are from social science background. She asked these questions.
Okay, yeah.
Different, maybe political science, philosophy, sociology, history, economics. So from different backgrounds.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Over
So
to you, Asta.
do you?
Yeah, you want to say something? Yes, please.
I'm saying that do participants want PowerPoint to be shared, or something without PowerPoint will also do? Pushpraj ji? अभी एक बार ये participants थोड़ा जो those who can actually being a co-organizer also I'll request at least
Yes, yes.
PowerPoint will help. थोड़ा अपना कैमरा भी ऑन कर लिया करो भैया जरा कभी we can see that those who are there at least if it's not a very difficult situation a couple of we can see.
You're talking about the participants camera?
Yes, I'm talking about the participants because I know all of you organizers. तो मैं सबको पहचानती हूँ. If some of you.
If it is possible, I'll check with the IT person if it is possible.
Okay.
And
is it something which has been decided at your end? That
no. I think it can be done. I'll
be
just check with the IT person and I'll ask if it's possible. I'm sure they can switch on the camera. I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, chalo,
Alright.
let's begin then. हाँ, एक ही घंटा है because I have to cover a lot of ground. So
Over to you, Dr. Asta. Dr.
हाँ,
Asta will speak.
ठीक है.
All right.
So,
Actually, participants won't be able to switch on their videos because they haven't been given the rights.
Okay. ठीक है, then no problem. I thought sometimes it's good to look at the person's face and then interact. Although of course there are limitations online.
They can interact through chat box, ma'am, because otherwise it creates problem.
It creates problem. Fine. Wonderful. चलिए शुरू करते हैं. Shall I
So
begin?
you'll have to be content with us only seeing our faces.
अच्छा.
Start.
So, welcome back, everybody. Greetings to each one of you present here. So, our second speaker for this session is Professor Sheetal Sharma. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. Professor Sharma is a faculty at European Studies, School of International Studies, JNU, New Delhi. She has received the JNU Research Excellence Award for her outstanding contribution and excellence in the field of social sciences and humanities in the Young Scholars category for 2018 and 19. Dr. Sharma was selected for the prestigious European Union Visitors Program 2020. She has been awarded a number of projects and financial grants funded under the framework of Erasmus program for the European Union and has been a part of a number of international projects as project investigator from India. She is the course coordinator for MOOCs courses titled as Sociology 1, Sociology 3, and also is the subject matter expert in the subject of sociology for school education offered by NCERT, offered through Swayam. She has completed a video lecture series in sociology for CIET NCERT, NCERT's project NROER. Dr. Sharma has published more than a dozen books, authored and edited, and 100+ articles, chapters, and commentaries. She writes regularly on socially relevant issues in India and Europe for journals and magazines of national and international repute. She has also been invited as a discussant on a number of programs on radio and TV and has presented papers in national and international seminars and conferences. With this brief intro, I would like to request ma'am to kindly begin with her lecture. Over to you, ma'am.
Ma'am, kindly switch on your audio, please.
It says the host has muted me. The host doesn't want to listen to me.
No, you're audible. You're absolutely audible, Sheetal.
Okay, so namaskar and good morning to all of you. I'm happy to be invited to this faculty development program and talking about research methodology and research methods in social sciences. I requested Dr. Shruti to give me this topic, research methodology and methods in social sciences, in order to establish that what is the difference between research methodology and research methods. Because more often than not, when we get people to do research, they are confused about, or they are not very clear about the distinction between research methodology and research methods, particularly in social sciences. And why I use social sciences? Because first of all, your group is interdisciplinary in nature. And the second is that among all social sciences, if you are studying sociology, research methodology has been emphasized right from the BA first year level, BA honors or BA pass, whatever you do. If you study sociology, the research methods is integrated into understanding the nature and the subject matter. So that is why it gives an advantage to me to talk from a sociological perspective to establish what is the difference between the two. I'll give you an example from all social sciences to make understanding clear. This PowerPoint is just indicative because I'm going to talk to you about this distinction. And since as organizers are telling me most of you are research scholars, so it would be interesting to also understand the difference. Now, coming on to this, like you have a general definition of the systematic analytical analysis of methods, field of study, whatever you see as highlighted in this slide. But research methodology is very comprehensive in nature because it is, number one, much more than just research methods. And when I talk about methodology, it involves the philosophical foundations, the theoretical foundations, and the practical aspects of conducting research. Now, what I understand by this, that when you talk about doing a research, you think about a subject, and interestingly, no matter what subject you pick up, other than the hardcore sciences in which you just mix chemicals and all that, in the social world, the domain is very interesting because no matter what subject matter you pick up, whatever you want to investigate, it can be investigated from multidisciplinary perspective. Say, for example, the very recent case of corona disease or COVID. Now, when you choose COVID as a broad area in which you want to conduct research, you can enter the domain from any perspective. Social, scientific, medical, biological, economic, political, whatever. So the implications of COVID on economy, the implication of COVID on gender, the implications or impact of COVID on labor, implication of COVID on migration, on psychology of people, on teaching, on learning, on online. Say, for example, one of the important outcomes, you may say, not negative or positive, outcomes of COVID is the way we are interacting. Some few years ago, we were not thinking of that one day I would be sitting in my room just looking at my camera and then thinking that 70 people are listening to me. So the issue is that no matter what subject is under investigation, you can approach it, and it is of interest to everybody, from medical sciences to psychology to isolation to loneliness to the post-COVID symptoms to everything. You think about it, I ask you to think, to imagine, and you know that my discipline fits into understanding COVID from this dimension. And why it is necessary? Because then interdisciplinarity is very important. Yes, fine. You understand that what vaccine is going to, do in my body, that's very specific to biological or medical sciences. But then if you talk about social world, how migration, led to loss of skills and labor shortages, then it had an impact upon economy, then impact upon the income, and income leading to violence leading to crimes. So they are like related to one another. They are so much integrated that if you want to split, it's very difficult to do. You may come up to certain distinctions, but it's very difficult. And how you study, is then your research approach, your research design, your research method, and in totality, your research methodology, that how am I going to understand this? Now, as you can see on the screen, that it talks about the two aspects of research methodology. One is the philosophical foundations of the research, and the second aspect is the practical aspect. Now, why we need to understand philosophical foundation in research methodology is to basically do this, to differentiate value from facts, to distinguish belief from knowledge, and to move from the realm of subjectivity to objectivity. Now, ye jo hai, this particular slide is your fundamental to understand. Ye hamara, the reason behind the research hai. And yes, of course, you may say that we find certain questions, we explore certain areas, we try to find certain answers. But primarily what we do through research is we distinguish facts from values. Now, values are what? Values are the things or the ideas or the entities that we cherish, that we hold high in our order. And value, more often than not, is considered to be very subjective because this is rooted in my cultural upbringing. So I am a cultural construct. I have a religion, I have a language, I have a dress pattern, I like some food, I dislike some foods, I prefer certain customs, certain traditions. So this is the package of values that I am handed over through generations. But values are to be separated from facts. Say, for example, I'll give you this example later on. Let me just concentrate there. So values may be something which may be value laden. Abhi tabhi aapka concept of value freedom, value neutrality, and value laden comes out of that. And you tend to differentiate it from the fact which is real, which is existing as it is outside. So with this philosophical foundation, that as a researcher, I'm going to differentiate between the two. So no matter what value, what cultural construct, what things I like or dislike, even if I have to say something against the value system, I must be able to do that. And that is systematic research. Number two, to distinguish belief from knowledge. Knowledge is much more than a fact. You will say ki knowledge or fact mein kya antar hai? Knowledge is much more academic in nature. This is more constructed through the systematic process of investigation or research. That means ki the fact has gone through the machinery of experimentation and then it has got established as knowledge. So I continuously observe, suppose ancient 5,000, 50,000 years ago, I was an ape. I was looking at everyday life, sunsets, weather happens, climate changes, snow is there, rain is there. So over a period of time, that collection of fact got converted into a pattern, and that pattern became a way of guiding my understanding about the physical world, and this has becoming knowledge. So everything starting from sciences up until social sciences, everything that demonstrates a pattern tends to get established as a theory, and theories are guiding knowledges or the frameworks that constitute knowledge. So my belief that okay, if I take this pill, it will cure my corona, this is just a belief until this is tested. Once tested, they say that, okay, the test has been successfully done on 10 people. Now, whosoever consumes this pill or is this tablet will be cured of corona or will have a higher immunity. So testing makes knowledge, belief as knowledge. So this is the process through which belief has to go. And that is what is research. And then the subjectivity, objectivity domain, that again, as driven by values, not systematically converting them into knowledge. I may have my personal opinion, prejudice, stereotypes, whatever, my dispositions about something. And this is where my subjectivity tends to cloud my objective understanding of facts and knowledge. And as soon as I do this testing, systematic experimentation to move from this quadrant to this, it becomes objective. It may actually remain the same. Content wohi ho sakta hai. But it has to pass through the process of experimentation, systematic understanding, systematic analysis, what we saw in the first slide here. So isko ye sab hona padta hai. Systematic analysis, method, main branches and all, procedures, rules and all, then it becomes objective. So subjectivity to objectivity. This is why we do research. Otherwise, so everybody has some or the other opinion about the world. But what distinguishes a layman's perspective from a perspective of a social scientist is the systematic inquiry, that he has been able to overcome these three issues. Now, What we know, once again, I have discussed this broad area of inquiry and what subject specific investigation you want to carry out in that. So आपका corona पढ़ना है in the broad area, impact of corona. Corona's impact on what? On human behavior, on health, on immunity, on education, on online education, and all these things is the subject matter. Now, this is very interesting, and I'll request you to note this down to understand the difference. Research methodology is composed of ontology plus epistemology plus methods, which means simple भाषा में यदि मैं कहूँ तो methodology और methods में अंतर है. Methodology is over encompassing and methods is just one set of research methodology, because ontology and epistemology, the other two philosophical vantage points, they help you understand that what research method am I going to use for this research. So this is what is very interesting. Now, I take you to a brief history of evolution of research methodology, and this is where on a timeline, if I draw a timeline here, just one second. If I take you back into history and I start with tradition, modern and postmodern, and if this is timeline where I place tradition here, modern somewhere here, and postmodern here on the timeline, so we see that research methodology moves like this. And because I belong to Center for European Studies, I teach this a lot, introduction of while introducing the European Society to my students. In terms of that, there's something happened here at one point of time in history, somewhere here. That was an era from where scientific thinking, modern thinking, experimentation, all this began. And what was distinct in this modern time as compared to the history, that there was scale and scope. And the method to understand this was different from the way it was understood in the traditional society. Abhi difference kya tha? The difference was in terms of applying logic to understanding. कि ये सब क्यों हो रहा है बाहर? I'm looking out from my window and I'm looking at the physical world, at the natural world. And people have been doing this for a long period of time. But the difference was in the way the logic, the framework, explanatory framework were applied to the things. So in theology, primarily God was attributed, or supernatural or unseen forces were attributed to any cause. जैसे कुछ हो गया, there is an earthquake, there is a tsunami, or any physical disaster, calamity, whatever you may call, it's happening. People do not have a reason or a logic for it. So whom they will attribute it to? To the God, to the unseen. Theology is a bit step further than, metaphysics is a step further than theology. And it tends to say that we tend to control nature by personifying the unseen and having a contract with the unseen. In terms of, say, if you can recall functionalist theories, and functionalist theories talk about when, particularly Bronislaw Malinowski and all these guys, when they talk about the fishermen, those who go to fishing in the oceans and sea, they perform certain rituals in order to ensure that they will return back safely. Now, this is all dependent upon nature, the natural phenomena. But the very fact that they have appeased the god, they have sacrificed a goat, or they have done something, it gives them a sense of assurance that nothing will happen and they will be coming back safely. So metaphysics is a kind of personification of the unseen, which gives a sense of security to the individual that all is well around us, just like Three Idiots, where you pour half a liter of milk and you bargain for the marks that you have. Positive is, or the scientific stage is a cut away from this. Ye maine aapko dikhaya, timeline pe it cuts, and then it talks about the scientific thinking. Scientific, and isko positive kyun kaha? Ye bhi value laden hai ki bhai ye negative kyun nahi hai? Ye positive hai, but science ne to itna kuch negative kiya. Science has opened up Pandora's box of all the evils that could have happened, but still positive in comparison to the first two stages, where reason and logic were rooted in something unexplicable, unseen, irrational, superstition, dogma, whatever you may call it. But positive scientific was, I am going to prove it to you. So if 100 people die in your area by drinking water from a well, so theology and meta-theology would say it's God's fury, because God is angry, he's killing you. Metaphysics would explain that if you perform certain ritual, if you do certain sacrifice, if you give 100 gold coins to the church, you will be cured. Scientific or positive thinking would say, this is contaminated, you stop drinking this water and you will be alive. Just like हमारा COVID, 6 गज की दूरी है जरूरी, and fit a mask on your face and all these things. So what is there? Scientific positive logic being applied to it. So this is how the change happened. This helps to understand the course of social change also on this timeline, and also the way we started thinking about the world. And very small examples, you know, they change the way the world was looking. And ये वो point है जहाँ पे I want to show you enlightenment. अब enlightenment में क्या हुआ? I'll give you a summary of all these points mentioned here. As the name suggests, enlightenment, they started thinking in a different fashion. The Europeans started, or the philosophers started thinking in a different fashion. And what was this fashion? The first comes from, one of the greatest blow comes from the transfer from geocentric theories to heliocentrism. Geocentric to heliocentric. And what was it? It said that Earth is not the center of the universe, it is the sun which is the center of the universe. And it was the first and the very deadly blow on the authority of church, which said, church which was believing and it was cooking all around that God is the center and God around which everything revolves. So this was one of the major blows. And final blow, and then one after another, people started thinking rationally, they started challenging scientifically, they started, you know, replacing the authority of church, indirectly authority of God, and all these things. And the final blow was social Darwinism, which said that the life on the earth is evolved from single cell amoeba. And you know, this is how social Darwinism proves the evolution of species, and also social Darwinism, that how mind evolves. And when you have a specific framework, reason, logic, science, experimentation to prove, this will be good for humanity, and this will be commitment to social progress. That anything which is arbitrary in nature, which is subjective in nature, which is value based, which is a belief, will not be taken for granted as it was happening in the traditional society. Now the societies will progress on the basis of scientific rationality. So उन्होंने क्या किया? Science became an intellectual activity, और उसमें systematic study होने लग गया. अब आप देखो, जब आप 12th तक पढ़ते हो तो it is social studies, है ना? Social studies पढ़ते हो आप. Why social studies? Your children and your family members must be studying facts, gather कर रहे हैं हम यहाँ about geography, about civics and all that. But once you graduate to the higher studies, it's no longer social studies, it's social science. Science, because you are now going to understand society systematically. And then what is science? Science no longer remains a subject matter as students understand in the class 12th or class 11th or 7th, 8th ki science pad rahe hain, not as a subject, but here science becomes a way of understanding the world. And that is why social studies also become social sciences, and you tend to study society scientifically. Or scientifically kaise padhenge? The systematic study where we are trying to understand how we use methods and experimentation to make sense of human behavior. Now, coming on to the next part of it, what are the assumptions? ये थोड़ा सा quick है because I don't have this much time to develop on this. So assumptions हैं कि भाई those who study positivism, the first theory of knowledge to evolve, they say that as nature is external to us, we can observe nature, it is orderly, and we can come up with laws explaining nature. You know that आपका मान लीजिए laws of motion है. If a body is in rest, continues to be in rest, or if a body is in motion, continues to be in motion unless until some external force is applied on it. What is this? This is a law-like explanation of the physical behavior of the object outside. So the social scientists thought the way scientists are studying the scientific world, in the similar fashion, we can understand the social world. So unka basic assumption kya tha ki as nature is orderly, social behavior is orderly. As phenomena can have causes, they also have causes. As nothing is self-evident, it is also knowledge. So they borrowed the same set of assumptions and applied them to the social world. अब इसमें थोड़ा सा limitation है, you know, like you understand, but before that, let us see what is the characteristic of science also. So the scientists were applying this unity of method and unity of measurement, और ये सब जो बाकी points आप देख रहे हैं, but let me tell you the gist of it. अब unity of method क्या था? Suppose you have to measure distance. All of us agree upon measuring distance, say in meters, in kilometers, in feet, or say in centimeters, the smaller length and all that. There is an agreement over the means of measurement, that you as a social scientist or Dr. Shruti as a scientist and me as a scientist will agree to the fact that if I have to measure a distance from Delhi to Bombay, we'll measure it in kilometers or in miles. It's not that she devises her own strategy and I devise my own strategy. So the characteristic of science was that there was a unity of method, unity of usage of terminology, unity of definition of concepts and all these things. And the consequence of this unity got revealed and exhibited in these areas. Like there was consistency, there was precision. So if this bottle is half a liter, every time I pour half water in this would be half of the half liter, so 215 milliliters, something like that. And all these things were based on proof. Every time they devised very interesting instruments. So every time I put this thermometer in my mouth, if I have fever, 101, 101, 101. So even if you put 10 thermometers, 10 different thermometers, there will be consistency and precision because I'm using an instrument for experimentation to prove the fact that yes, I have fever and this is what is knowledge over the belief that why am I hot or why am I feeling warm and why am I feeling shivery. So the simple thing is कि इन्होंने procedures, template, manual ऐसे set कर दी कि there is no questioning about कि तुम क्या कर रहे हो, क्यों कर रहे हो, and what is the reason behind this. So the motto was of this scientific method was to know is to predict and to predict is to control. So let me take you back to this example. To know that why 100 people are dying is to predict that this water is contaminated, और predict कर लिया तो control कर लो. जैसे COVID में हुआ, to know कि the virus is spreading through physical contact is to predict. तो predict कर दिया कि भाई it is transmitting through people's touch, human touch. तो predict को control कर दो, distancing, masking, covering and all these things. Simple. So science has a procedure, science has a way, and this way was applied in social sciences to understand. The application was not actually systematic or transferable, but still we attempted a lot, and that is why plus minus 5-6% of subjectivity, error, bias and all these things, they tend to remain in that. But never mind, abhi itna time nahi ki hum discuss kar le because it's a complete course in research methodology, but mota mota janne ke liye ki this is what the social scientists were trying to do. Now you'll say, ma'am, first you remember that first equation, ontology plus epistemology plus method. Ab ontology kya hai? Ontology is the philosophy concerning nature of reality. Now, what do you mean by nature of reality? That what is the framework through which I look at the world? How do I make sense of the world? Because this ontology is going to get reflected in my epistemology and in my methods. अब ये मैंने आपको 3 उदाहरण दिए, मैं 1 या 2 पे ही डिस्कस करती हूँ आपसे. Say for example, structure and agency. Now, this particular ontology, structure and agency, can be explained in the terms of कि जब science और scientific वो हुआ method, the sociologist or the social scientists equated man with the matter. You remember the assumptions अभी मैंने आपको थोड़ी देर पहले दिखाया था कि man, if we can understand the external world is physical world is external, hence it can be measured externally. So man, the same set of ideas or assumption can be applied on the social world. So man exhibits the same qualities as matter. When we can study matter scientifically, we can study man also scientifically. So what is the, how do we understand it? Through structures. What is structure? Structure is the externality of the society. ठीक है? अभी externality को कैसे measure करोगे? Sometimes it's confusing. कहेंगे क्या मैम, क्या society external? It reduces human behavior to measurable variables. Okay, कैसे? If I say A is income, okay, A is education, if I say, is directly proportional to B, which is income. So मैं क्या कर रही हूँ, ह्यूमन बिहेवियर को एक्सटर्नल समझ रही हूँ कि एजुकेशन बढ़ेगा तो सोसाइटी में इनकम बढ़ेगा, और इनकम बढ़ेगा तो इट विल बी इनवर्सली प्रोपोर्शनल टू क्राइम. A is directly proportional to B, B inversely proportional to C. So what is this? This is a law-like explanation about society. And this is what you see. Nutrition, malnutrition, COVID, distancing, whatever you think about, there is a general law-like prediction about the nature of society, that societies which develop fast have higher level of education. The higher level of education leads to higher level of income. The higher level of income leads to low levels of crime, but higher level of nutrition and standard of living. Hence, these societies are more liberal and evolved. What is this? Just like if there is light, there is soil, there is fertilizer, there is chlorophyll, synthesis will happen. Are we not doing the same thing here for the social world? So they equated man equal to matter. And no matter whatever institution you take, the structuralist, हमारा जो structuralist school of thought है, it tends to consider and measure the externality of the behavior. So हम ये कह देंगे कि those who are present in the meeting room regularly are hence motivated. So there is a perceived correlationality between the observable behavior of the individual. Those who are present are motivated, and they are they are going to challenge the tradition, inversely proportional to the traditional thought. You can think of, ये तो लिखा हुआ है for the easiness sake, I am fitting variables into it, but you can do this in any fact. The behavior is, and I give you a very recent example here. I don't know, please just use this as an example only. These days on social media, you measure the success of, or the success को नहीं, क्या कहेंगे उसको, the popularity of any video or any short piece on the basis of the number of viewers. अरे इसके 50,000 हैं, कल 60 हो गए, 70 हो गए. So the viewership is directly translated into B कि ये अच्छा है. But it can be criticized also कि अरे क्या बना दिया, you know, and you know many examples. I don't need to utter them here. You know कि viewership does not necessarily mean the good content, and this is where there is limitation of measuring human behavior through variables. Then हमारा जो agency वाला आता है, this counters man and matter, and it says, my dear fellow, my dear social scientist, it is not so easy to equate man with matter, because the human nature cannot be equated with matter. Why it cannot be equated with matter? Because matter reacts to external stimuli, है ना? Whereas man has his own agency, his freedom to act. This is consistent, this is routine. Once it behaves like this, it will continue to behave like this. Say for example, H2O, two molecules, two atoms of hydrogen, one हमेशा मिलाओ उसी में water ही बनेगा. Precipitation वो ही होगा. Chemical reaction वो ही होगा. Matter reacts in the same fashion, reacts to external stimuli. तो उन्होंने बोला अच्छा तो biology में क्या होगा कि biology भी being ऐसे ही होगा. If I am animalistic tendency, you hit me, I'll identify the danger and I'll hit you back without even thinking ki, what am I doing? So saving matter or biological world or the physical world, which does not have the ability to reflect, it just reacts to. So matter reacts, the biological world may respond, but what is humans' capacity other than reaction and responding is the reflexivity. Abhi reflexivity kya bala hai? Reflexivity challenges all the assumptions that are there, which we associate with the matter. I hope I have time. Time. So man kya hai? Man is using his capacity, his freedom to challenge this general A directly related to B to C. So what example can I give you? That suppose reflection, respond or reaction को एक में ही करते हैं. Suppose there are two bikes coming from two different directions down the hill. The physics studies the slope and the acceleration, and both of them coming together at the similar angle and colliding one another. Reaction. Physics understands this. Biology understands that if two beings are coming, even two animals coming, hitting at each other, sensing a danger, they would respond to the external, they would hit each other, save themselves. Man, two people coming in the opposite direction, collide with each other. They would get up. If do not know each other, fight with each other. If know each other, they would say, oh my God, I'm so sorry. If they are in a relationship, say brother, sister, brother would get up and tell sister, I hope you are fine. Sister would say, oh, you do not know how to ride a bike. They would. And if you are in a relationship of hierarchy, then suppose your ma'am is coming from this side and you are coming from this side, even if she is at fault, you will say, ma'am, I'm so sorry, you know, it was my mistake. So what? Are we reacting like matter? No. We are using our reflexivity, our understanding. We are processing the information on the basis of n number of things, and we are using our agency to respond to the situation. And this is where the ontological vantage point is very important, that how do you understand the world from a structuralist perspective or from a constructivist perspective. और यहाँ आपकी सारी theories, phenomenology, ethnomethodology, symbolic interactionism, everything fits into this agency wala world, and functionalism, structural functionalism, structuralism, all this fits into the structuralist domain. So आपका main difference जो ontology और epistemology ontology में है, structure और action का, is on the basis of your vantage point. How do I understand this? So Shruti, shall I give one more example to make this clear? Where is the audience? No, yes or no?
I think, ma'am, yes, you can give one more example. I think that's a quite interesting and clarifying topic. So.
Yes. So structure में अगर हम मान लो, if you are trying to measure empowerment of women, I think when I was talking about feminism last time, I gave you this example. If I measure empowerment of women from a structuralist perspective, जैसे कि हमारे मोटे-मोटे government policies में होता है, so what can be the possible list of variables that I can use in order to measure empowerment of women? Income, political participation, say for example, income, political participation, decision making, profession, educational attainment, rise in number of women in STEM disciplines, and all these things. So depending upon that, there is a general increase in the ratio of women in higher education, women are getting empowered. है ना? There is a rise in the workforce of women, then there is empowerment of women. Women are doing more, so there is empowerment. अब क्या ये empowerment का ये इतना simple है? This is where you have to understand it from the constructivist perspective. That despite ticking all the check boxes of empowerment, say education, income, political participation, decision making, fertility, choice, and everything, despite checking all the indicators of empowerment of women, if a woman does not have power to resist, do not have capacity to raise voice against domestic violence, then this is something which is not understood from the structuralist perspective, but this empowerment, income, or emancipation has in fact led to suppression of her ability to raise voice. So this is where the agency funda comes, and we try to understand it from that perspective. Now, consensus and conflict once again is very interesting, and this is where Marxism and functionalism come. Consensus matlab functionalism, or conflict matlab Marxism and all the various branches of Marxist theories. Broader framework जो है Marxism से ही है. So conflict क्या कहता है, consensus क्या कहता है? ये कहते हैं, ये दोनों कहते हैं कि there are vantage points to understand a society or a structure. So if I take religion from functionalist perspective is a unifying force. Religion from a conflict perspective, the same religion is a force that creates friction and division in society. So that's my vantage point. If you do a research, you come to me, ma'am, I want to do a research on religion, revival of religion in modern society, say in Europe, I would say, which perspective do you want to take? Do you want to understand religion as a unifying force, which is bringing people together? Or you want to understand religion from a conflict perspective? You'll say, ma'am, let me think. And 2 days later, you come and say, ma'am, given the fact in the background, I think I will analyze religion from a conflict perspective because the instances of this are more. All right. So then I'll ask you again, from which perspective do you want to understand? From the structural perspective or from the constructivist perspective? You'll say, ma'am, the data greater indicators are from the structuralist perspective, but I want to understand it from agency perspective. So you create a hypothesis that in modern times, religion, revival of religion is leading to creation of in-group and out-group among people, which is leading to marginalization of societies. Suppose ये hypothesis बना दिया आपने इन 4 parameters को लेके, आप field में गए, आपने जाके देखा कि ऐसे instances मिले मुझे जहां पे मैंने अपने hypothesis को falsify किया. मैंने ये दिखाया कि despite belonging to different religions, people have come together on greater occasions, and they have not been driven by their demands of their greater religion structural, but they have been driven by their agency. And वहां पे उन्होंने मेरी hypothesis को disprove किया और established notion के contrary to the established notions, they have given evidences. So I falsify a hypothesis which was trying to understand this. And this is what is the ontological vantage point, that how do I enter the domain, what I intend to study from this perspective or from this. These are the primary divisions. There are many, you will come across them when you read research methodology as a complete course. But to begin with, chota mota understanding to this. What is empiricism then? Empiricism is the philosophy that how I know what I know. What convinces me that I know. So suppose ये बहुत important epistemological change हुआ था यूरोप में, तभी ये ontology and all rest of the things have come into existence. अब this is pen. How I know that this pen exists? This pen exists, no, I know because I'm seeing it. If I cannot see, I've touched it, I've felt it. I know that there is an object in my hand that is like a pen. So seeing is believing. All the empiricists, basically scientists, the 16th, 17th century scientists, those who said that seeing is believing. You just believe in something that satisfies your senses of touch, belief, smell, and all these things. And we believe, knowledge, value, sabko reject kiya, because they were so fed up with God and supernatural that they said, unless we see something, touch, believe something, ki God, dekho, God aayenge, wo tumhe cure kar denge. Na, I will have this injection and get cured. So seeing is believing. Something which gives me tangible outcome, tangible results. That is this empiricism. You measure it. Externality. So income hai, I can see it. Malnutrition is going away. I can see it visibly measurable in terms of change in your weight, height. So empiricism is seeing is believing. Rationalism is also a sisterly concern of empiricism, because once again, empiricism has its limitations. आप कितना empirical समझोगे? So even in the scientific world, photosynthesis is empirical, but empirical not like this. Sunlight आई, chlorophyll में गई, then इसमें ये हुआ. I cannot see it. I can see photosynthesis. I can realize photosynthesis only in terms of its consequences. कि भाई फल उग गया है, पेड़ is healthy. So rationalism is the application of logic in these processes. So अगर empiricism में आपको एक example दिखाती हूँ. Suppose this is a wall. You can see this. And there is a person who is moving behind the wall. And the empiricism would say, and the person is wearing a hat. Suppose this white is hat and this is the person. The person is moving behind the wall. Now empiricist would say the hat is moving, but is it possible? Hat cannot move. So they say that empiricism ko challenge karte hue, they say that there is an application of logic that an entity, not even a human being, an entity, or it may be on a stick, something, which has a hat on it, is moving behind the wall. Since the height of the entity is greater than the wall, that is why the hat is seen moving, because hat cannot move on its own. This is rationalism. Social sciences में आते आते ही rationalism क्या बन जाता है? Phenomena बन जाता है. तो हमारे sciences में phenomena of heating, melting, condensation, photosynthesis, all these are principles, the law-like explanation, which application of logic. So anything brought closer to heat will melt. Anything that is brought kept in freezer will condense. Condensation, distillation, all these ization processes are rationalist principle of application of logic. अब ये social sciences में कैसे हो जाता है? Secularization. Okay, every time I don't have to understand what is secularization, what is the basic feature of secularization. Globalization, westernization, Americanization, secularization, industrialization, migration, internationalization. You talk about any phenomena, marginalization, exclusion, everything is an application of logic, of selective framework or definitions. जो फूको कहता है ना, typification हो गया, institutionalization हो गया, reification हो गया, हमारा phenomenization of the concept हो जाता है, और यहाँ पे हम epistemology आ जाते हैं. अब epistemology में से निकलती है हमारी theories of knowledge. कि am I going to believe just by seeing, or am I using logic? In fact, in social sciences, you use both of them. Sciences empirical jada hai, greater in empiricism, and yes, equally in rationalism, in rational application of logic. And social sciences too are, you know, aap ye bina kahe sirf application of logic, armchair sociologist thod na banna hai. So rationalism is equally important as empiricism, but there is a combination of both. And from this comes our theory of knowledge, positivism, realism, and तीसरा क्या है? Interpretivism. Yes, positivism, rationalism, positivism, realism, and interpretivism. So this is what is there. But let me, because हम थोड़ा इसकी तरफ आ रहे हैं, last part की तरफ आ रहे हैं आपके, So I think, ठीक है. So let me talk about your research project, and then depending upon what you study, why you study, how you want to study, you have to make an appropriate choice between this and this. ठीक है? And then various theories of knowledge, positivism, realism, and interpretivism. Now, this is also influenced by your type of research project. अब रिसर्च करना है, बहुत अच्छा नोबल आइडिया है भैया, एडमिशन मिल गया, करेंगे JRF एंड ऑल दीज थिंग्स, बट योर रिसर्च प्रोजेक्ट इज इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय अ लार्ज नंबर ऑफ कंसिडरेशंस, and the considerations are theoretical, practical, time, and resources. And all these four considerations are important for understanding the type of research that you are doing, which is doctoral, academic, market oriented, sponsored, and institutional projects. Abhi quickly kya hai? Doctoral research, so all of us, most of us are doctors here doing our doctoral research, and some of the research scholars are doing doctoral research. And I sometimes really on a lighter vein say that, you know, the takers of your doctoral research, the readers or the are very few. Maybe you, your brother or sister or your friends, those who want to do some grammarly corrections, your external and your supervisor. So there are very few people, those who are going to read your doctoral research. Unless until it goes on now, तो इस जमाने में शोध गंगा वगैरह पे आ गई हैं, and inflibinet, so where people can actually see more often than not, they tend to say अरे क्या किया क्या नहीं किया, कुछ समझ में नहीं आ रहा. So doctoral research is you are constrained by time, कि आप you cannot just continue to work on it, कि मेरा passion है 10 साल तक एक research पे लेके बैठा रहना. You have to finish it in time, otherwise you will be out of the system. You are constrained by resources, either you have a scholarship or not. Doctoral research you are doing at that point of time in your life when you have social pressures of getting settled in life, marriage, falana dimkan. So there are many considerations. Then theoretical and practical. Your idea may be very good. Your teacher says, no, beta, this is not viable. How much time can you spend in the field? Say, for example, in area studies, we face this. Students want to collect data from Europe. For how long can they go to Europe? Time is a constraint. Time bhi hai, to chalo, resources. You have to survive there. At least 1 lakh per month is required, and you get a meager amount of fellowship to go and survive. So various consideration, doctoral research bound by a number of limitations. Takers are few, but this is an important benchmark because it transforms you professionally. Academic, जैसे पुष्पराज सर कर रहे हैं, मैं कर रही हूँ, श्रुति मैम कर रहे हैं, we are doing academic research that we have settled other things in our life, but this is what we need to do to remain in the enterprise of education. And we are conducting this research as research projects which are sponsored by certain agencies. You get funding, you do a research which is time bound. Yes, of course, time and resources are not that much a problem, but then along with other issues, it is the academic research which is driven by certain expectations from the faculty members. API वगैरह भी भरना होता है. And the takers of this research are much more than your doctoral research, because यहाँ पे 5-6 हजार लोग तुम्हारा journal पढ़ ही लेंगे if you publish it in good research journals and which are online available. So this is another one. The market oriented, which is primarily done by the corporate sector, by the private sector, and the medium of this research is nothing, just to sell my product. So 30 सेकंड में कभी कभी समझाना पड़ता है आपको एडवर्टाइजिंग के थ्रू कि तेरी कमीज मेरी कमीज से सफेद कैसे है. So just one sentence makes it clear that don't buy this washing powder, buy this one. So just one line, this, but their orientation is to make profit. And all this on well-being, on health, on body, on coffee is good, tea is bad, green tea is good, this weight is bad. Everything is associated with this market-oriented philosophy, and ये सबसे ज़्यादा dominant है these days. They hire people to take data, and all this AI is influencing and helping them so much so that 3 times I say South Indian खाना है, भूख लगी है, तो there will be Zomato पे ad आने लग जाएंगे, the South Indian restaurants near me. So this is market oriented, where everything that I utter catches, and this is really becoming dangerous, threatening over a period of time, that how consumer behavior will be manipulated by those who are powerful in the field of information and technology, the capitalists, those who can invest more. Then government sponsored research are like census, those which are collecting data at panchayat level, at district level, at state level, to identify the trends of democratization, of empowerment of women, of enrollment, of politics, and all these, and they get reflected in the manner. आप तो उत्तर प्रदेश में MAT वाले क्या उन्नत प्रदेश, उत्तर प्रदेश, and punchlines, and they provide you statistics every day on newspapers. You see इतने किसानों को ये मिल गया, उतनों का ये benefit हो गया, उतनों का, मतलब बड़ा pages का, they are on the basis of certain facts. No theoretical consideration, no practical. Time is enough, resources are enough, just everything sponsored by government, backed, sometimes driven by their own agenda to project that their policies are better than the other policies. And then institutional projects, like all your think tanks and all these guys are engaged in, wo bichara thode bahut resources they borrow from line ministries and all that, and then they work on these projects, and then they involve doctoral researchers, interns, academics, kuch market be, kuch all, sabka mix mila ke they keep on producing certain good interventions which may in future or not produce certain good policy inputs and all these things. So these are the considerations in research, the type of research which tends to influences your ontology and epistemology. और finally हम आते हैं अपने, ये तो छोड़ दो, ये भी छोड़ दो, ये भी छोड़ देते हैं, ज़्यादा बड़ा हो जाए, ये last thing I just want to explain to you. कि then comes your research methods. अब research methods क्या क्या हैं? Just remember the research methods can be plotted in this graph. You can see secondary here, primary this side, quantitative and qualitative. Quadrant 1 में you can place methods which are quantitative in nature but are taken from secondary sources. Secondary sources क्या हैं? The sources which are already existing. Sources, say for example, official statistics, census, data sources, Pew Research Organization, Eurobarometer surveys, the data which is quantitatively existing, and you use that data to project. So if you want to do a study on the change in the income of women in the last 50-60 years, you go to census, you say how many women were employed in primary sector, secondary, tertiary, how their things have gone up. So basically the quantitative and secondary data helps you to notice trends. So if I draw a chart like this, that enrollment of women has been going up, the population of women in tertiary sector has gone up, and women in primary sector is okay. So basically the quantitative secondary sources data that you borrow from somebody else's this, and you use this data to predict certain trends which are easily understandable, analyzable in terms of graph, in terms of pie chart, in terms of percentages and all these things. The second khanna is your Q2, quadrant 2, which is quantitative and primary in nature. This is the data that you collect yourself through survey as a research design, and you conduct quick survey, or you tend to read many research in Times, India Today, Outlook magazine, Mainstream, and all these things, where you study, okay, this survey was conducted among 10,000 people in 4 metropolitan cities, where 50% were men, 50% were women of the age group of 18 to 20, to understand the impact of social media on their voting behavior. ठीक है, तो फिर आप एक क्वेश्चनर बना लेते और आप पीछे पीछे, सर आप just give me your 2 minutes. You have experienced this in malls, in shopping complexes, on road, people collecting data for this purpose or that purpose. But this data is limited because this just gives you few options to choose from. Tick, 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 tick. You want to say something more than yes, no, can't say, I don't think, to certain extent, to large extent. So here there's a limitation of collecting this data, quantitative in nature. So you jump onto the third quadrant. इधर से इधर कूद गए, anti-clockwise चल रहे हैं हम. So third में आके you talk about qualitative and primary data, which then helps you to go into greater in depth. So suppose I take you back to that. Education of women is leading to empowerment of women is a general trend among 1 lakh women in Delhi. But only 10 women showed that despite this, there was a loss of liberty and freedom. So you choose these 10 people कि इनसे बात करो, ये case study है, इनको पढ़ा जाना चाहिए. So you go and you say that despite conforming to this normal hypothesis of income leading to empowerment of women, why do you think that you are less empowered? I would say because it has taken away my freedom to act openly and move in public and talk about my life and all these things. So I become a subject matter of case study, where you conduct unstructured interviews or participant observation or case studies with me to collect the primary data, which is qualitative in nature. And the last quadrant is your secondary and quantitative, secondary and qualitative, sorry. यहाँ क्या होता है कि here you tend to have data which is qualitative and secondary, and you collect this data through autobiographies, through historical records, through archives, which helps you to explore about that time. So if you want to understand what was the nature of, जैसे मुंशी प्रेमचंद के नॉवल तो बहुत ही बढ़िया है ना, वो उस समय की सामाजिक राजनीतिक अवधारणा को बताते हैं कि औरतों का उस समय किस तरीके से ट्रीटमेंट किया जाता था. So these are the autobiographies, novels, diaries that depict in past, because I can't travel to past, but I can derive information from those secondary sources, which is qualitative in nature. So I end my talk here. Stop sharing. I want you to ask me questions now. Stop sharing. I hope this was clear. Whatever I attempted to do, it has made some sense to the audience, and yes.
So do we have questions? Kindly post your questions in the chat box or maybe comments.
सब शांत बैठे हैं भाई सब. There is no question. Shruti?
मैं तुम्हें क्वेश्चन तो नहीं पूछने वाली. नहीं. Yeah.
Ma'am,
Is there any? Yes. Yes. Dr. Asta.
So, ma'am, when we talk about, for example, feminist epistemology, so I'm basically from philosophy background. So, ma'am, we spoke about imperialism and then postmodernism and so on. Ma'am, there is also one theory called the standpoint theory, right? Feminist standpoint theory that talks about the social position of women and how then you kind of act in a particular manner. So you talked about ontology, epistemology, you also spoke about rationality and other fields of philosophy. So, ma'am, what would be your take on considering the social aspect, social side of methodology?
नहीं, Asta, social side of, देखो, standpoint is an epistemology that understand the world from the women's perspective. Feminist epistemology यही है ना, कि why do you want to create policies that do not reflect women's position or women's thinking? Because I give you an example, it primarily जैसे जो management में पढ़ते हैं, and if some of you are from management sciences, scientific management का एक major criticism था that they came up with certain rules and procedure to manage business or factory work on the basis of male sample, and it was applied to females. But females had a different kind of, set of working condition, orientation, and all these things. So this is where I would say that feminist standpoint itself is an epistemology, that ये आपका vantage point जो है वो मेरी eyes से ही है, if you want to understand something. How useful is a policy for me is to be understood through my perspective rather than somebody else saying about this. So that's the philosophical standpoint. What I have done in 1 hour's time, I have given you broad distinctions between this. But remember, in research methodology, the rule is that there is no rule. Okay? There are overlaps between, there is nothing strict like, ye rationalism hai, ye individualism hai, ye principle. No. Since we are just like an organic body, it is not that when my eyes are seeing, my ears stop hearing. When my heart is beating, then my legs stop moving. It's an organic process. Every aspect philosophy is overlapping. And this is why you have to understand that many perspectives, ideologies, vantage points are at play at a given point of time. So my becoming a sarpanch is empowering me politically. But at the same time, when my husband replaces and he answers all the queries, the Panchpati wala concept hai, that means patriarchy is in operation. And then when this small change in my life you are understanding from feminist perspective, you will question that how much this policy of reservation for women in Panchayat has actually altered empowerment or the status of women. Not much. So understand it from women's perspective. That is what, there are multiple perspectives in play, and even a single individual or best, aska pata hai aap kaise samajh sakte ho? Put yourself in the subject. आप अपने को सब्जेक्ट में पुट करो. साइकोलॉजी में कभी कभी डेंजरस हो जाता है कि एवरीथिंग डिप्रेशन, अच्छा मुझे ही हो गया, विड्रॉल मुझे ही हो गया, दैट्स डिफिकल्ट. बट इन सोशल साइंसेस इट्स इंटरेस्टिंग टू यूज योर एग्जांपल्स टू अंडरस्टैंड the dynamics of theoretical perspective, epistemologies, ontologies, and methods. है ना? I think. और कोई प्रश्न तो नहीं है? नहीं, चैट में कुछ नहीं है.
There is one question. Dr. Ashwini, sorry, no, Dr. Rubina is asking, what is the difference between naive and critical realism?
देखिए, ये रियलिज्म भी पता है बहुत, दिस इज ऑफन मिसअंडरस्टूड कॉन्सेप्ट, बिकॉज रियलिज्म की थ्योरी भी है, रियलिज्म की थ्योरी ऑफ नॉलेज भी है, और रियलिज्म आप जैसे क्रिटिकल रियलिज्म की बात कर रहे हो ये भी है। रुबीना, विच डिसिप्लिन आर यू फ्रॉम? यू टेल मी, तो मैं आपको उसी के हिसाब से उदाहरण देती हूँ। जस्ट राइट इट इन द चैट बॉक्स इफ यू आर साइकोलॉजी। ओके, साइकोलॉजी। आपने डरखाइम पढ़ा है? जस्ट राइट यस और नो। डरखाइम्स थ्योरी ऑफ नॉलेज ना, हम सोशियोलॉजी में कभी कभी पॉजिटिविज्म में पढ़ाते हैं, श्रुति है ना, डरखाइम इज अ पॉजिटिविस्ट, कभी कभी हम पढ़ाते हैं डरखाइम इज अ रियलिस्ट, है ना। अब रियलिज्म क्या है बेसिकली, ये मैंने जो स्किप किया ना, आपने वही क्वेश्चन पूछा। 3 types of theories of knowledge: positivism, pure relationship, observable; interpretivism means understanding, and the in between is the realist. अब realist क्या है? Realist borrows from science only, but they are like rationalist. कि things are observable in terms of their consequences. What is observable may not be real. अब ये critical realism पे हमें लेकर जाएगा कि what is observable may not be real. अब मेरा कहने का उद्देश्य क्या है इस बात से कि sometimes the observable regularity is an outcome of sometimes the observable phenomena is an outcome of unobservable regularities. मतलब कि जो आपको ऊपर दिख रहा है, से degree of integration of an individual to his society, degree of an integration of an individual to his society is a consequence of unobservable factors, है ना। और एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग स्टडी है डरखाइम की, उसमें वो आपको बता रहा है कि why people commit suicide, and he divides suicide into 4 types, and he says the degree of the integration of suicide is because of the degree of or the rate of suicide of an individual society is dependent upon the unseen factors. अब मैं आपको एग्जांपल देती हूँ कोटा से, या सपोज आप रेट ऑफ सुसाइड इंडिया में चेक करो, तो रेट ऑफ सुसाइड इंडिया में क्या है, सडनली इफ यू ड्रॉ इट ऑन नंबर ऑफ मंथ्स, जनवरी, फेब, मार्च, अप्रैल, मई, जून में एकदम रेट ऑफ सुसाइड अप जाएगा, जुलाई में अप जाएगा। सो डरखाइम कहता है ये क्यों जाएगा, ये सोशल फैक्टर्स हैं, सोशल रीजंस हैं, क्योंकि इस टाइम आपका 12th का रिजल्ट आता है, द डिग्री ऑफ इंटीग्रेशन, एक्सेप्टेंस, रिजेक्शन ऑफ द एजुकेशन सिस्टम, सेटिस्फैक्शन विद मार्क्स, ऑल दीज रीजंस आर देयर। तो आप कहोगे कि ऑल these reasons there, तो 10 लाख बच्चों का रिजल्ट आया, only why 10,000 या 1,000 commit suicide? Because these are the individuals, those who have a lesser degree of integration with their family, with their friends and all that. So there is a likelihood of propensity of these people committing suicide ज़्यादा है. Critical realism is a kind of understanding of such facts, where if we want to take a clear cut A is directly proportional to B or B is inversely proportional to C kind of vantage point, then critical realism helps us to uncover the differences in way the individuals are going to act. So why not every individual commits suicide whosoever fails? Because Durkheim would say कि उसका degree of integration with this society is greater as compared to those who committed suicide. तो उसने कहा कि अच्छा ये होता है, तो उसने कहा कि ठीक है, I'll prove it with data. Realist perspective is actually a theory also. Realism हम international relations में भी पढ़ाते हैं, वो भी अलग है कि स्टेट क्यों एक तरह से बिहेव करती हैं। भाई स्टेट एज एन एक्टर, मैं स्टेट हूँ, मान लो मैं रशिया हूँ, तो मैं क्यों यूक्रेन पे युद्ध करे जा रही हूँ? स्टेट इज एन एक्टर। तो स्टेट इज ड्रिवन बाय 3 कंसर्न: सिक्योरिटी, सेल्फ हेल्प, और तीसरा मैं भूल गई, अभी बता दी याद करके, सेल्फ हेल्प, सिक्योरिटी और ऐसे ही होता है कुछ। सो वो 3 है, तो उनको लग रहा है कि हमारी सिक्योरिटी के लिए वी नीड टू बी अवे फ्रॉम नाटो, एंड नाटो से अवे तो हमारा ऑब्जर्वेबल बिहेवियर इज अ कॉन्सिक्वेंस ऑफ अनऑब्जर्वेबल रेगुलरिटी, है ना। सो रुबीना, in psychology, when you are like you are trying to have a direct correlationality between observable behavior and regularity, that is to be broken down and understood by having a different vantage point approach, I think. I can't hear anybody. Shruti, I hope all is well.
All is well. Dr. Asta is going to say something. That is why.
Have other questions here. So, so with this, I would like to thank ma'am for her contribution. We are grateful for the time and effort you have taken to share your valuable thoughts and insights on this very relevant topic, which is methodology. And also, ma'am, one point is very, interesting, and which is that you try to highlight the difference between research methods and methodology altogether. So as philosophy students or faculties, we are aware of the difference. But then generally, if you talk about normal researchers or researchers who belong to different fields, they're not aware of this difference between method and methodology altogether. So with this, I would like to thank you once again, ma'am, for presenting your views.
Thank you, Dr. Sheetal, for taking time out and delivering the session. It was indeed very insightful, and as always, I'm sure it's going to benefit all the research scholars who are present here and all the participants who are participating in this FDP, because these are insights sometimes when we are in the academics for so long, and as you've mentioned in the lecture also, we go into a different kind of academic publishing. These things where the basics or the fundamentals of research methods, you have reviewed it very nicely. These are some things which, just the fundamental aspect of research methods, done very well, wonderfully. So thank you so much, Sheetal, for coming. I hope you will be there for the second session, post-lunch session.
Which session? Next session?
Professor Shweta Prasad.
I will.
If you're,
But one thing before I leave, I want to tell the participants here. See, research methodology is fundamental to all the disciplines, no matter what you study. All right. And I repeat, rule is that no rule. Times have changed. What you consider as source of data, as piece of data, as information, they are also becoming very flexible, like in philosophy, in psychology, or even in social sciences. For a long period of time, we were not relying on certain sources as authentic sources. But postmodernity has dissolved, blurred that boundaries also. Now you consider even any source of information as source of information. And this question mark on authenticity of this information is little less. And for the benefit of this age of researcher is that कि आपको इतना information is already existing on net. जैसे in terms of बिना even going to the field, you do Eurobarometer survey, you will look at most of the things which are there in quadrant 1 and 2. Already you have basic premise to do a review of literature, understand gaps in research, and then venture on in your journey. So it is not that if digital world has created certain problems for us in certain realms, it has really helped academic world to have access to data which is already existing and to number of studies. So make most of it, and then never ever get driven by the rigidity of research framework, because ये एक यात्रा होती है जो आपको करनी पड़ती है, और जो उसमें कष्ट आता है, पत्थर आते हैं, वो आपको ऐसे नेविगेट करके चलना पड़ता है. Then only you would be able to find conclusions. ठीक है? Thank you very much for being there. Nice meeting all of you, and over to the speaker for next session. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Asta.
So I've shared the feedback form. Kindly fill it out.
All participants, please note that the link for the feedback form has been sent by Dr. Asta. Please fill it up before we break for lunch, which will be at 1. And we start, Dr. Asta will say, when we'll start the next session, who is the host, who is the speaker of the session.
Our speaker is Professor Shweta Prasad from DHU.
So we'll break for lunch at 1 p.m. You have time now to fill the feedback. And all of you, please join in by 1:45. We will be starting by 2 p.m. Am I right, Dr. Asta?
Yes, ma'am.
So, very good afternoon to all the participants here. We have a speaker who has joined us. Ma'am, if you'd like some time to settle down, that's all right. We
No,
can
it's
start.
okay.
It's
It's
all right?
yeah.
Okay, all right. So, over to you, Dr. Asta.
So very warm good afternoon to everyone present here, and a warm welcome to Professor Shweta Prasad. Professor Shweta Prasad is a professor at the Department of Sociology, Faculty of Social Sciences, BHU, Varanasi. She is the member of the Managing Committee of the ISS, that is Indian Sociological Society. She has also been the convener of Gender Studies Department of the ISS. Presently, Professor Prasad has additional charge of Director, Center for Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, BHU. She has also been credited with the Leadership Training Award for Asian Women in Agriculture (R&D) by the International Rice Research Institute, Philippines. She has completed 4 projects with fundings from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Bank, the USAID, and the UGC. She is actively engaged in research in the areas of gender, environment and climate change, globalization, and gender gender violence against women, etc. Professor Prasad has completed 2 consultancy projects and international consultancy jointly with the University of Washington and PATH, Seattle, US, and 1 national consultancy from Gale, India Limited. Recently, she has completed 12 projects as the chairperson, multidisciplinary expert committees constituted by the government of UP under Land Acquisition, Rehabilitation, and Resettlement Act 2013. She is also a nominated member of Rashtriya Uch Shiksha Abhiyan by Utkal University, Odisha. She has been a reviewer and editorial board member for some highly reputed international and national journals. She has been appointed review editor for the US-based open access journal Frontiers in Tropical Diseases for 2 years. With this, I would like to request ma'am to kindly begin with her enlightening talk. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Hope I am properly audible. It was quite chaotic for some time. Am I audible properly now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, yeah, as I was saying, it was quite chaotic for some time, and in between also, I might log out due to network connection, which is very poor. Despite having 3 network connections, I'm not able to connect through any one of them properly. So now this is the reality of our life now. When we are going digital, such problems will occur. So now coming to the topic which I had given, and it is reflexivity in qualitative research, if I remember correctly, not feminist research, because the word feminist comes to my mind immediately. So the reflexivity in qualitative research, we are going to talk about this here. So as we know, the most of the, in fact, quantitative researches are what we do when we are doing quantitative researches. We try to give facts and present it as neutrally as possible and communicate it in a manner which is very, very objective. This is we do with most of the quantitative researches. But as we know, qualitative researches are very subjective in nature. And why it is subjective? Because not that in quantitative researches, respondents or human beings are not involved, but qualitative research becomes very subjective for the reason because of involvement of participants as well as the researchers. And researcher plays very important role in qualitative researches, if we look at the qualitative researches, we find that right from the beginning of researches and all the formalities which we do with most of the researches, the qualitative research is led mostly by the researcher, and the discussions, the interview, everything is led by the researcher, and participants do play very important role. And so we see that the views, the beliefs, and the perspective of the researcher becomes very important in qualitative research. That means qualitative researches are rarely value-free. Values are inbuilt when we are talking about qualitative researches, values of the participants, values of the researchers. These values are present throughout the research process when we are conducting or getting involved in qualitative researches. So what happens, the beliefs, the values, and the qualitative research, basically, where do we come from? That decides our perspective, our beliefs, our values when we are conducting qualitative researches. And when we are talking about where do we come from, that means we are talking about our positionalities. The positionalities that in fact shapes our beliefs and values, being in fact belonging to particular gender, particular race, particular political ideology, particular religion, particular historical and geographical location. All these somewhere shape our beliefs, our values, our perspectives towards the phenomenon which we are going to study. So qualitative researches are basically here positionalities play very important role, because these positionalities shape our decides or shape our beliefs and values, and in turn decide the outcome of the research. So positionalities become very important when we are talking about qualitative researches. Now, the reflexivity is an important part of positionality, because in qualitative researches, positionalities are in fact explored through reflexivity. So reflexivity in turn becomes very important. And what does it do? It's somewhere when we are talking about the beliefs and involvement of participants and researchers, and in qualitative method, we somewhere talk about dismantling of hierarchy, that the researcher and the research should be on the same platform. That's what we try to do when we are conducting qualitative research. But in this specific case of reflexivity, what happens that the researcher, in fact, the reflexivity takes this focus from the subjects of and puts it on the researcher. That means basically researchers become very important here when we are talking about reflexivity. Not that when we are talking about researcher, it is important to remember that researchers might have to influence the entire research process in a very positive way. It's not essential that the research will be influenced only negatively because of the biases of the person involved or the researcher involved. Many a times there may be positive impacts also of the researcher on the research process. So what we have to do that to explore the positionality and how it impacts our belief system, our biases, we have to be reflexive throughout the research process. That's what we have to do. So basically, in qualitative researches, researchers engage in reflectivity to account for how subjectivity in fact shapes the inquiry, how subjectivity shapes the outcome of the research. So that is why reflexivity becomes important. And as we have already discussed, the focus in term when we are talking about reflexivity on the researcher, then on the researched. So so what does reflexivity do, or what do we mean by reflexivity? So we can discuss few characteristics and few definitions of reflexivity when we are talking about reflexivity in qualitative research. Basically, reflexivity involves questioning of one's own taken for granted assumptions. The things that we believe, the things that we have been doing, we have to question. In fact, reflexivity involves questioning those assumptions which we have taken for granted for long, and examining. It also involves examining one's own beliefs, so that the research process, and it should be practiced throughout the research process when we are talking about reflexivity. So how our own assumptions, the assumptions of the researcher, might have impacted the outcome. Reflexivity exactly does the same by taking, in fact, does take care of the scenario where our own assumption might influence research process in a negative way because of the biases we have, because of the preconceived notions we have about certain phenomena, depending on our positionality. Like when I interview someone who is a female, there is a tendency, I have observed this tendency, there is a tendency in me to believe that person, that whatever she is trying to say is correct. Recently, as you know, I had informed you that tomorrow I'm leaving for International Sociological Association conference, and in that connection, I was collecting data, and nearly 3 days back, I was interviewing one of my respondents. It is in fact completely case study method because I did not have time, so I took few cases. So I was interviewing that candidate, the respondent, and somewhere I was also trying to practice reflexivity, because whatever she was trying saying, I was somewhere believing the entire narrative which she was trying to narrate, the entire story, the episode, the situation she has been through, which she was trying to explain. And when I was believing everything she was saying, the question came to my mind, should I not be vigilant about some false information? And then I tried to critically analyze whatever she was trying to say or communicate to me, and by looking at her gestures, by looking at her way of expression, here I was trying to be reflexive with the respondent, but in the process, somewhere I was also trying to be reflexive with my own assumptions, because of being a female, and because my area is also gender studies somewhere, or say women's studies, because gender covers other gender also. Somewhere I have this tendency to believe women, whatever they are saying. And now I'm learning to be reflexive and not to get biased because of my positionality. So positionality, we should be very aware of when we are talking about reflexivity. Mainly, reflexivity is a continuous, collaborative, and multi-faceted practice through which researchers, in fact, self-consciously critique, appraise, and evaluate the process through which their subjectivity and the context they belong to might influence the research process. So basically one has to be aware. So if we look at reflexivity, we find that it's an ongoing process that should be followed throughout the research process. Second, we see that reflexivity should be integrated into the research team dynamic. That means it should be shared and it should be cooperative in nature. And the third characteristic, should I say, of the reflexivity is that it involves critical attention to personal, interpersonal, methodological, and contextual factors. While being reflexive, we should pay attention to all these dimensions, not only personal, but interpersonal, that I was doing that day while collecting data. Methodological, the method we select for our study also decides the outcome. So while selecting the method, we have to be reflexive. Like one of my research scholars, he's a main research scholar, and he was about to enter field, and he came to me with a questionnaire that, ma'am, please check the questionnaire, and I have to collect now data. So when I started going through the questionnaire, interview schedule, it was not questionnaire, interview schedule. The nature is of the questions are the same in both interview schedule and questionnaire. Only thing which differentiate is the way we interview, whether we give it to them or we collect ourselves. So what we do, what I saw in that interview schedule, entire question is studying on female representatives, female Panchayati Raj representatives, and every question was closed question. He had given 3 or 4 options, and he wanted to the respondents to reply by ticking those questions. I said that if you are studying, first condition of studying a female respondent, or when you are doing research on female or some, in fact, research on female. So you have to keep most of the questions unstructured and open-ended. So I asked her to remove him to remove all the options which he had given to the researcher, in fact, respondents. So the method we are selecting, the technique of data collection we are choosing, everything involves, in fact, we have to be reflexive during each of these stages, so that nowhere biases has the scope to creep in. So to be as much objective as possible, though qualitative research and objectivity can't go hand in hand. Both are totally different things, but somewhere when we are practicing this reflexivity, we are trying to be objective in the sense that we are trying to take care of our own biases, our own assumptions. In so far, in fact, when we are trying to do that, we are trying to be objective to that extent only, not complete objectivity, because that will somewhere influence the very purpose of the research. So what basically primary goal of the of reflexivity in qualitative research or in any research is to be aware of the biases of the researcher and how these biases can shape our, in fact, the outcome of the research. So we have to be basically careful about that. And if you look at the ways in which these biases can creep in into our research process, there can be multiple ways which we were discussing also. One example which I was giving. Otherwise also the way he was trying to collect data using a closed questionnaire, whereas open-ended questionnaire was the need of the need of that particular study. Then the choice of method of data collection. Here also reflexivity can be practiced and should be practiced. Then how do we analyze the information that we get? That there also reflexivity has to be practiced. And then how do we report the information that we have collected? Here also we need to practice reflexivity. So there are stages during the research process where we have to practice reflexivities to avoid biases during the research process, to avoid the results getting influenced by our own biases, by the biases of the researcher. So this is what reflexivity does. It helps the researcher understand his or her positionality and then use that understanding in the construction of knowledge. This is what ultimately reflexivity does. So basically, as I was discussing, that in qualitative researches, researchers mostly engage in fact, the positionalities of the researcher influence the research process, the outcome of the research. And in fact, by doing that, by taking cognizance of our positionality, the positions from the positions to which we belong, from where do we come, and the social context from which we come, all these have to be taken care of, or we have to be consciously taking in fact, practicing reflexivity while doing our research, or while understanding our positionality, while understanding and questioning our assumptions and our biases. So we have to continuously practice reflexivity. Now, is it part being reflexive? Does it mean being reflective? There is slight difference when we talk about being reflective and being reflexive. Each one of us, when we are studying, when we are collecting data, we try to be reflective, we reflect on the data collected, and we try to improvise if somewhere we are lacking. But reflexivity somewhere goes beyond this stage, and it talks about the relationship of the researcher. It talks not only talks about the reflection which we do, but we go beyond this simple reflection and judge our biases, take care of our biases, and how it might influence the research process. We also try to recognize the fact, and then we try to be as objective as possible by removing our biases. So we have been somewhere repeating all these sentences since the beginning, just in the so that I can explain it properly, taking everything. So now after discussing the difference between reflexivity and reflection, let us move beyond this and discuss the types of reflexivity. There can be few types of reflexivity, like personal reflexivity, which is a process of reflecting on one's own beliefs, one's own values, one's own life experiences in order to identify their impacts, the impact of our experiences, the impact of our life processes, and the impact of our values on the research. And we have to basically personally be reflective when we are talking about personal reflectivity. Let us take one example to understand what is personal reflectivity. I'm trying to do something in US on Asian diaspora, South Asian diaspora. Now being part of that South Asian diaspora, when I will go and collect data from the respondents who are part of the diaspora, what will happen? Somewhere my own biases, being part of the same community, the experiences which I had as part of that South Asian diaspora might influence the way I look at the things and the decision that I take. So to avoid my own personal experiences influencing the research, the question that I'm going to ask, what I should do, I should be I should practice reflexivity to avoid all these biases. So reflexivity can be personal when we are practicing it at personal level. Secondly, reflexivity can be functional also. And in functional reflexivity, what we try to do, basically we try to examine our role as a researcher as it pertains to the practices and processes of the in fact of conducting research, and how in fact the decision of conducting research, choosing particular method, particular type of question, how all these influences the research, how our decision can influence the research. This is functional reflexivity. And let us take one example. Why do we take certain decision that we take? This is this can be a perfect example of functional reflexivity. Let us take one example. Few months back, nearly 1 or 2 months back.
Yes, you are audible, ma'am.
Okay, are you talking to me, Pushparajji? Okay, I'll go ahead. So I was talking about functional reflexivity. And what is functional reflexivity? Let us take one example to understand what is functional reflexivity. And I was saying that few months back, nearly 1 or 2 months back, I was in Patna in connection with a Michigan University project. We had gone there with certain idea that we have to approach these people and collect data from them. When we reached there and when we were on the field, we realized that what we had initially planned is not going to work here, because we'll have to change our plan. While the data which we aimed to collect, we could not have collected it by the way we were going. So we immediately changed our plan and adopted different way of going about this research. Now, if we had the decision which we talked about leaving one way and going another way, this was a reflexive decision. After looking at the in fact alternatives available, we took this decision. So when we try to decide in this manner, the way we make the decision, the rationale behind those decisions, and how our values are going to influence the process of making decisions, all these are part of functional reflexivity. Now coming to the third type of reflexivity, that is reflexive thematic analysis. This can be the third part or a type of reflexivity. It is basically an approach. That the thematic analysis reflexivity is an approach to thematic analysis that values the researcher's subjective experiences as the primary way to discern knowledge from data. So the experience or the subjective experience of the researcher matters a lot, because we believe, we trust that the subjective experience of the researcher is important when he is going through data or when she is going through data. The discernibility part of that researcher on the basis of his or her subjective experience, that becomes important when we are talking about thematic analysis in reflexivity. So basically, the goal here is not to search for objectivity or to remove bias, which we have been talking about since the beginning, but instead to use the researcher's personal experience and values as the primary tool to make sense of that data. So far, we are talking about that research outcome should not be biased, so researchers should be reflexive. Here, for the first time, we are talking that researchers' experiences and subjective experiences are very important. This discernibility is very important. So we have to trust that in this third type of reflexivity, that is reflexive thematic analysis. So these are the three types of reflexivity. Now coming to why should we practice reflexivity in social research, or why do we need to engage in reflexivity in social research? Give me a minute, please. So why should we engage in reflexivity? First reason of engaging with reflexivity during the research process can be dismantling the oppressive structure, the oppressive power structure. What happens? We have been talking about how positionality influences our own belief system. So positionality, in fact, in society, we are part of different categories, we are part of different groups with different kind of power dynamics. So when we come from that particular background, we have that tendency to continue the practice in the research process also. Reflexivity here ensures that researcher is not perpetuating that same oppressive structure or the power dynamic within the research study and towards the participants. So to be free of that power structure which he is carrying or she is carrying with him because of or her, because of the positionality, because of the places they come from or the categories they belong to. So to avoid that, in fact, in the research process, to dismantle that oppressive structure or to leave that power structure behind, we should have to engage in reflexivity in the research process. Another thing can be trustworthiness. To increase the trustworthiness of the research outcome is another reason we should be engaging with reflexivity during the research process. What happens when we are talking about trustworthiness and in research? Basically, trustworthiness means that the purpose and the design of the study aligns with each other, and especially this is especially important for the qualitative research, and we are talking about qualitative research here because the researcher here is a tool for collecting data and for data analysis. So the researcher becomes a tool in qualitative research. So to ensure and in fact, to ensure that purpose and design align with each other, to ensure that the findings are replicable and in fact, generalizability of the finding and replicability of the finding. It may not be possible in qualitative research. So what we have to do, we have to practice reflexivity to increase trustworthiness, and we have to establish it through in fact 3 ways. First, credibility. Second, transferability, and third is dependability. So credibility in when we are talking in terms of increasing trustworthiness, and why should we engage in reflexivity? So what it does, it relates to how compatible our findings are with the reality. So we should try to achieve this when we are trying to increase trustworthiness of our research process and the findings also. Transferability. What it does, in fact, it is about generalizability of the research finding. Is it possible or not? We should be trying to achieve it as much as possible so that we can increase trustworthiness. Third is dependability. In qualitative research, in fact, it's not about replicability of the findings that we already discussed, but when we talk about dependability, there we talk about, in fact, the consistency that should be maintained between the findings and the data collected. Both should be consistent with each other to make the study dependable. By doing all this, by practicing credibility, by transferability, ensuring transferability, and by increasing dependability, we can increase the trustworthiness of the research outcome. And this is the reason, in fact, one of the reasons we should engage in reflexivity. Now, every research has certain goals, and to fulfill these goals, researchers might have the goals to neutralize the influence of subjectivity. They might acknowledge the influence of subjectivity. They might explain the influence of subjectivity, and they might try to capitalize on the influence of subjectivity. So there can be different goals while we are conducting researches, and reflexivity helps us in all achieving all these goals. And that is also yet one another reason why should we practice reflexivity in social research. So talking about neutralizing the influence of subjectivity in qualitative research and practicing reflexivity, when we are talking about this neutralizing effect, what we have to do, the impact of the researcher's subjectivity, in fact, in trying to neutralize the, in fact, the subjectivity of the research, an attempt can be made to take a tabula rasa approach. We know about the tabula rasa approach, and one of the famous personality, I'm forgetting the name, has talked about it. Let us not get involved in the name. So what it talks about, the tabula rasa approach, it talks about a blank slate. That means, is it possible to make the slate blank? No, it simply means that we have to maintain an objective distance from the, in fact, this phenomenon of the study. An objective distance is important to neutralize the subjectivity. So this can be one goal why we practice in fact, reflexivity. Another, in fact, what happens that many researches nowadays, in fact, largely have fallen out of the favor. In fact, many qualitative researchers nowadays don't talk about neutralizing the subjectivity in qualitative research because it might be problematic and many a times it might be impossible also. So they try and move ahead with this subjectivity instead of trying to neutralize it. And what it does, basically, a hierarchy is created between the researcher and between the participants. When we try to neutralize the effect, what happens? The researcher becomes a neutral observer. He positions himself outside that entire research setting. He doesn't get involved because it's trying to maintain a distance to neutralize the subjectivity. So somewhere it has negative impacts also. So many researchers nowadays don't try to neutralize subjectivity while they are practicing reflexivity. So now acknowledgement can be one of the goals why we practice reflexivity. So moving beyond neutralizing impact, the primary role of reflexivity also to acknowledge the subjectivity. And many a times, most of the researchers just acknowledge that my subjectivity might have influenced the research, and that is sufficient. By doing that, one can move ahead. So acknowledgement can be one of the goals. Then explaining that yes, basically only explain the reflexivity, in fact, subjectivity that might be there in the research process or might have influenced the research outcome. Last thing or the last goal is to capitalize on reflexivity. Again, it becomes important because we have been talking about that we have to maintain a distance, that researcher should be carefully examining his or her own biases and assumptions and practice reflexivity. But here, when we are trying to talk about capitalizing on subjectivity, we are somewhere talking about that subjectivity in qualitative research is an integral part of the research process, the part of data collection process, in fact, the way data is reported. So why not capitalize on reflexivity instead of blaming it for subjectivity? Let us capitalize on subjectivity. In fact, yes, capitalize on subjectivity. So here the researchers, in fact, try to convey the meaning that practicing reflexivity is important to take care of the subjectivity, but subjective experiences are also important. Like we were talking about the subjective experiences of the researcher, in the discernibility of the researcher to distinguish can also play important role. So many believe in capitalizing on these subjective experiences. So if the goal is to capitalize on the subjectivity of the researcher, then also we have to practice reflexivity carefully. Here, deliberately trying to, in fact, notice the subjectivity which is going and which is beneficial for the research. So these are the certain goals for which in fact researchers can practice reflexivity. But what happens, unfortunately, it is a very vague concept, a vaguely understood term, if not concept. reflexivity is not very clearly understood, and that's the reason the result is not properly addressed, or should we say poorly addressed in most qualitative publications. We don't see reflexivity getting properly addressed. Despite all these, in fact, despite the uncertainties related with reflexivity, in fact, somewhere we can see that there is growing recognition that reflexivity is an important part of qualitative studies, and now we are talking about being reflexive while doing qualitative research. So what are the advantages of being reflexive while conducting research? We have been talking about the goals and why should we engage in reflexivity. There are certain advantages. In fact, it increases accountability. We have already talked about trustworthiness, for which we have to practice credibility, transferability, and dependability. So we will not discuss that here. Let us take accountability. One of the advantages of practicing reflexivity, in fact, reflexivity is a means of holding the researchers accountable, and in fact, throughout the research process. So this is one of the advantages of this reflexivity, other than trustworthiness, that improves public perception. Trustworthiness, why we practice it? Because we want to increase the public perception of the finding, public perception of the create a public perception, a positive public perception of our study and the outcome related to the studies. Somewhere we try to validate the study in the eyes of the public by practicing this reflexivity. So trustworthiness is yet another positive aspect of, or positive feature of, reflexivity. Then clarity is also important when we are practicing reflexivity. By incorporating, in fact, legitimate reflexivity related practices into study, researchers can somewhere present the project's result with a clarity, with precision. So we practice reflexivity to increase clarity. Then personal growth is also one of the reasons why reflexivity is important, or one of the key positive points of reflexivity. So through reflexivity, if we are practicing reflexivity correctly, it forces the researcher to engage in a kind of introspection that is genuine, leading to the personal growth of the researcher also. Like I was giving example, personal growth. Let us not take that example. I have already discussed the example which I was talking about, my female respondent, and how I was trying to be reflective with that. Somewhere it leads to your personal growth, because you are aware of your own biases. You try to introspect and try to neutralize those biases, which leads ultimately to personal growth. And so that is one of the advantages of practicing reflexivity. So are there only good things about reflexivity, about practicing reflexivity throughout the research processes, or is there something bad also about reflexivity? There are few criticisms also related to reflexivity, but these are minor pitfalls when we talk about reflexivity. So, in fact, we have throughout the this presentation, we have been discussing that reflexivity is a great tool that can help validate in fact, qualitative research, and it is possible also. In fact, while in the process of validating the qualitative research and practicing the reflexivity, we have that tendency, we might go insane also. Like, why I'm using the word insane? Because if you start practicing reflexivity at every step, you'll always be doubtful and you'll have to practice it. Suppose you are asking question, you'll practice reflexivity. Whether my own biases are affecting this question, you'll ensure that it is not affecting. Then when you are, the respondent is answering the question, you'll again reflect that whether my biases, are they affecting my perception of the respondent's answers? So you'll again practice reflexivity. That means throughout the research question, only one question will take you long if you're trying to be truly reflexive. So when you practice reflexivity sincerely, you might go insane, and your research, in fact, we know that we engage in researches in a time-bound manner. So it might go derail, in fact, entire process. In fact, the practicing reflexivity might derail the entire research process also, if you practice it too much. So this is one thing we have to be careful about, to focus on reflexivity only as much as it is essential. Now, who would decide the essentiality component, how far it is essential and how far it is not? It is totally up to the researcher. Only thing is to avoid getting insane in practicing reflexivity, because that will definitely derail the entire research process. So with these words, I think I would like to stop. Maybe in the question answer session, we can, okay, let me speak only. We can have to, so in fact, if we want to practice reflexivity, you have to prepare a journal, a diary, where you have to just write down the positionality, your own positionality, the biases you might have. Like when I have to write, I would explain my positionality, being gender, being coming from a particular community, being in a job, and all these things have to be mentioned in that log. You have to prepare a log, so and publish it with that research finding, so that the reader knows the background from where you are coming, your positionalities is aware of, the reader is aware of the positionalities, your biases, all those are there. So by doing that, somewhere you can be just, I would say, to the research process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing, for telling us about flexibility and its in qualitative research. As you see, the theme of this 6-year research faculty development program is we are emphasizing and as to how to develop, basically, to have a strong theoretical foundation based on qualitative research. And reflexivity plays a very crucial role, and you have talked about the different dimensions of reflexivity, giving different types of, how it is different from reflections, etc. And I'm sure all the participants today would certainly, the takeaways from the session has been so immense. They would understand about the researcher's bias, look into it deeply, and on the basis of that, design his or her questionnaire, survey, or whatever it is. Over to you, Dr. Asli.
Please post your questions in the chat box. If you have any questions or comments for our speaker. Okay, ma'am. for question. Ma'am, so when we talk of the self as being closely linked with the other, or seeing the self from the other's perspective, when we talk about reflexivity, so ma'am, here don't you think reflexivity is highly rational or reason-driven in nature, because it's trying to keep a check, right? The biases that you spoke about and the way we act in a neutral manner through reflexivity is being highlighted here. So ma'am, don't you think it gives no space to sentiments, or we can say sensitivity or emotionality at all?
Yes, you are right. Because when we are trying to be reflexive, yeah, emotion gets a place, because we try to manage or balance our emotions. We try to be reasonable or try to reason through the research process. So yes, these things are there when we are trying to be reflexive. So basically what we are doing, we are trying to be reflexive so that our own biases are not part of the research process. So that's, you're right, totally right.
Thank you, ma'am. So are there more questions or comments from the participants?
Current scenario, in current times, there is more emphasis on research studies which are focusing on more empirical methods, quantitative methods they're using. And the qualitative, we see a decline in the kind of qualitative research in the context of India, which I'm basically talking about. So basically, we need to, why is it so? I mean, because in the West, there's so much of emphasis on empirical research. And I mean, this is what I feel, is that we are trying to focus more, and we'd like to follow basically the Western trend, and thereby we emphasize, and we tell our students, our research scholars, to focus more and more on empirical research and quantitative paper, because of the time that we need to get it, the students need to get it published, as earlier it was mandatory for PhD, etc. So simultaneously, as a result of this, we are seeing that in social sciences, there is a decline in qualitative research. So in your opinion, what is your personal view on this?
Decline in qualitative researches in social sciences. What happens, it depends on the type of research we are going to conduct, on the objectives that we are looking at, trying to find out, and the universe also, the section which we are trying to study. All these decide whether the method should be qualitative or quantitative. For any study, I think mixed method, we all practice mixed method. Even when we are trying to get involved or indulge in qualitative researches, the approach or the method that we use is a mixed method approach, by basically the socio-economic information that you collect from the researcher. That is somewhere quantitative only. You are looking at quantitative data when we are collecting this basic kind of information. On the basis of that information, suppose the rate of domestic violence in India, how many people are suffering, how many women are suffering from domestic violence, whether it increased during COVID-19 or not. If we have to study this, the prevalence of domestic violence and its increase or decrease during COVID-19 period, we would go for quantitative data. So because qualitative data here would not help, our aim is just to know the prevalence. So we know the numbers, we want the numbers and the percentage. If we want the number and percentage, we would go for quantitative method. increase or decrease during COVID period, we would go for quantitative number. But if we are trying to look at the nature of violence, which increased or decreased during COVID period, like in India, street violence was not there during COVID period because the streets were in fact vacant. Because of lockdown, we were all at home. So cyber crimes somewhere had increased, and NCW had reported also crimes, severe crimes against women, online crimes had increased. So when we try to look at the nature of the problem, we'll have to go for qualitative study. Now, why it is decreasing in India? Maybe the kind of issues we are trying to study needs quantitative method, application of quantitative method. But if we are, one thing I'm sure about, that when we are studying women, when we are trying to know the nature of something, even if we are studying men, when we are trying to study the marginalized communities, we have to use qualitative method. The social positions, the feminist standpoint theory, it says that the knowledge is located in the social position one occupies. So if we have to look at the knowledge, like we cannot generalize the experiences of women. My experiences can be different. A woman who belongs to indigenous community, her experience might be different. A woman who belongs to certain category, her experience might be different. Like in Panchayati Raj study, one research was conducted under me. It was in fact, MA dissertation, and the research scholars came to me and explained that scheduled caste women, Panchayat Raj representatives, those who belong to scheduled caste, they are doing much better than upper caste women in these Panchayati Raj institutions. Why? Because the upper caste limits the movement of women because of various reasons, gender roles, gender norms, decide how would they behave in public, whether they would be allowed to leave the home or not. Further system is there. So all these factors at other places, upper caste women might be doing well. But in this case, scheduled caste women were doing much better than the general category women. So positionality, in fact, the social position from which we belong, from where we come. So if we have to study the knowledge of which belongs to that particular social position only, we have to use qualitative method. So maybe we are doing more researches of general nature. That's the reason we are using quantitative method. So because I'm not very familiar about this, but yes, I know for sure that quantitative method can be used. We all know, in fact, at certain places only. And for some study, we have to use qualitative, and we have to combine the methods also. Mostly we combine.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Dr. Asif, over to you.
Ma'am, we have two questions. First is, how can we differentiate between objectivity and reflexivity?
How can we differentiate between objectivity and reflexivity? Yes, I was talking about this somewhere, that what we are trying to do by reflecting on our own subjectivity. And I had also said that when we talk about practicing reflexivity during social research or qualitative research, we try to remove our biases. And if we are trying to remove the biases, that means somewhere we are trying to be as objective as possible. And I had told also that both these don't go hand in hand, because being objective in qualitative research is something we don't think about. But when we are talking about reflexivity, that means we are trying to remove the biases and trying to be as objective as possible. Why? To increase the trustworthiness, to increase the credibility, to increase the, in fact, public perception of our research. So yes, I would say to certain extent, we try to be objective when we are being reflexive throughout the research process.
Thank you, ma'am. The second question is, do you agree or disagree that social sciences suffers from severe publication bias?
Severe publication
Bias.
bias.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I would say yes, because social science publications, what happens in science, we do bureau paper research. I have seen science people doing research because we were in a same building, and many flowers and in the flower pots were they used to put in the morning in the sunlight. I used to ask, what do you do? Why are you keeping it here? They would answer that in the evening we'll collect data. So you put the flowers outside in the sunlight. In the evening, you collect the data. There are many researchers here from botany, and I like their research because somewhere they speak about the poison which we are consuming. The vegetables, the vendors, what they do, they place the vegetables on a thela in a public place, and throughout the day, dust is gathering on the vegetables. And in the evening, when they studied, and the finding was really alarming, by the evening, the vegetables are not worth eating. So, placing something at one point in time at some place and then taking it back and place it under observation in some through some microscope or something like that, and then write the paper. This is very simple kind of thing to do. As this is what I feel. Science people would not agree definitely with me, but in social science, you have to deal with multiple kind of complexities. Your complexities related to your own perceptions and biases, complexities related to the respondents, to the research surroundings. There are so many things. The data which you are getting, you're not sure that they are whatever they are communicating is the fact. So yes, social science research itself, entire process is very tiresome. In fact, problematic also, I would say. But this is not to discourage, because going to the field and trying to get what is correct information, and if you try to cross verify the findings, you'll get the correct research also, correct finding also. So coming to the publication part, Banaras Hindu University is an IOE institution of eminence status. It has received from Government of India, along with 5 other universities in India. So here mostly science people dominate. And I was trying to defend one of my course, which I launched. Instruments. Simple kind of instrument. And the entire board, which was sitting where I was presenting my finding, involved people from science. And their reaction was, why do you need these equipments to conduct research? Social science research don't need all this. They would allot themselves crores of rupees for a certain kind of equipment. But for social science, they don't want to give you even 10,000 rupees or 50,000 rupees or 1 lakh rupees. I should not be saying this because for other purposes, they do get. But this was their reaction. Why do you need this? I said, we are social scientists. We have to network. We have to invite people for lectures. Networking is the thing through which social sciences survive. And the exchange of ideas is possible when we interact with people, when they come here, when we go out. So this is basic in social sciences. They said no, they did not agree. I said, I'm sorry to say, but all of you are social scientists. That's why you are not going to understand what I am saying. So this is another, I think one lecture can be organized on this also. How science people dominate social sciences. Then I said to some IOE chairperson, in fact, I was talking to, I said, this year I'm going to give you the number of publication I mentioned, this much of publication, and very highly reputed international publication houses. He immediately asked, is it paper or is it chapter? I said, most of them are chapter, but yes, few are papers also. Why do you write chapters? Why not papers? Because paper will increase the ranking of the university. I said, okay, I'll try and remember this fact that papers increase the ranking of university and will write more papers instead of chapters. So all these facts are there. Yes.
There is a discrimination, ma'am. You would agree that there is a
hierarchies in
academic. And publications also, ma'am, if you see compared to science, because it is more empirical and
very less publication.
Yes, and the social sciences, because our emphasis is more on qualitative, so the publication also.
One reason, I would say why less publication in science, in engineering, if you see research scholars, we keep guiding our research scholars, they are not in a position to give us a paper. In science, why teachers publish so many papers? Because if they have 6 research scholars and they are observing morning to evening certain phenomena, they'll immediately write a paper after a few days, and it will be a joint paper because the supervisor is guiding. So, and the topic is being done, research is being conducted by the researcher, it will be a joint paper. In social sciences, we don't practice this. And out of quality concern also, I remember, in fact, my student wanted to put my name for some paper. I said, no, please don't do that. Because somewhere we have to. And nowadays, I can see very good researchers are coming up. So we have to be careful to increase the number of publication. We have to be careful at the stage of entry also only. The kind of research scholars we are taking, whether they are serious or whether they are here to enjoy the rupee, the 8,000 rupee which your university pays them, simply because they are joining as research scholar. BHU pays them 8,000 per month if they join BHU as research scholar. So this is a big motivation for many research scholars. One evening, I was walking in Banaras Hindu University campus. 3 research scholars were in front of me at some distance, and they were talking loudly. One was saying, I would use their language, so I would use explain whatever they were saying, in fact, within inverted comma, in the same language. One was saying to another, मैं शादी ऐसी लड़की से करूंगा, मैं BHU के रिसर्च स्कॉलर से शादी करूंगा. तो दूसरे ने पूछा, क्यों BHU के रिसर्च स्कॉलर से शादी करोगे? बोले क्योंकि मुझे जो है इतने साल में 15 लाख मिलेंगे. The amount which he had calculated was 15,000. So the word which he used, the amount was 15 lakh. 15 लाख मुझे मिलेंगे इतने साल में, 15 लाख उसको मिलेंगे, दोनों मिलाकर 30 लाख हो गया. तो रिसर्च ज्वाइन जो लड़की करेगी, मैं इससे शादी कर लूंगा और जो है 30 लाख लेकर हम लोग अपना कुछ करेंगे या कहीं जमीन खरीदेंगे. They are purchasing land, they are purchasing cars. So many are into all this. So if their focus is on all these things, definitely number of publication will not be that much. Secondly, we are dealing with human beings, which I was saying. So our research is complicated. So it takes time, and then also cleaning data and looking into data, whether it is correct or not, going back to the field, all this takes long. So these are the factors, I guess, because we have to work alone. We can't combine with our research scholars for publishing papers because we are not sure whether they will be writing good papers or not. I would give one example. Recently, one of my research scholar came to me, in fact, last year, not recently. And he said, Madam, I plan to write a paper. I said, okay, on my research topic. I said, fine. So guide me. I gave him all the headings under which you have to work. Explain what you have to look for in under all these headings. And when he comes to me with the paper, it was useless paper. I said, after explaining all those points, you are coming with to me with all these rubbish kind of stuff. So, madam, please check and improve. I did again that. And he came back to me again. I said, why are you not following what I am saying? You have to do all these things. Finally, he did not do it, and he sent the paper to Springer. One evening, few days back, I received a mail from Springer that you have registered with the Springer Journal. I called him up and asked, did you improve the paper? Because I had asked you to do all these things. Did you do that? Or did you send the paper as it was? He said, no, ma'am, I have improved a little. And now I'm worried that what would Springer people think about me? That my name is there. Definitely, I have written that paper, or at least suggested that, or gone through. Similar thing happened 2 years back also. The consultancy which I was doing, both the investigators, one was field coordinator, another was overall coordinator. They said, madam, we want to write a paper. I said, fine, write the paper. And I went through the paper also and tried to instruct them, but they did not do it. And then finally they sent it to for publication to few places, and it has been published now. So all these, you are scared. Now, when someone comes to me that I want to write a paper, I would first say that, will you please, before putting my name there, you please improve, and whatever I am doing, asking you to do. So this is also one of the reasons why we are publishing less. But I'm very happy at the progress which I can observe in India. Very young researchers, and they are writing very good papers. Even in BHU also, very few researchers, but they are publishing with international journals. So yes, there are many reasons why we are publishing less, but we are improving and getting more focused somewhere.
Thank you, ma'am. We have one more question from Dr. Ram Prakash Tiwari. He's asking how much statistics analysis or data analysis is important in social sciences research.
It depends totally. No one can, in fact, generalize how much you have to analyze your data or how much statistics is needed. You have to decide on the basis of the topic of your research, whether you have to go for a statistical analysis or not. If you have to go for statistical analysis, what kind of statistical analysis do you want? So it is completely up to the researcher. There's no hard and fast rule related to statistical analysis, as far as I believe.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions, Dr. Asta?
No questions, ma'am.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Shweta, for, Professor Shweta, for coming and taking this session. And this is the second time we've called you, and we're very happy that you could spare time. I know you as a researcher, obviously as an academic head also, you are responsible for so many other things. And as you've mentioned, that BHU has been ranked as the IOE. Congratulations for that. It's the combined effort of all the faculty out there that you are in that position. But I am also aware of the research work that you have been doing. And very recently, you have returned from the University of Michigan, where you completed a research project. And you've come back, and I think you've been engaged with another project here. So ma'am is a very active researcher, even though she holds such a high position in BHU, but you will see her on the ground, on the field, collecting data, and as she has mentioned rightly, research papers vigorously in different publications. So we are very happy, ma'am, that you could spare some time out and deliver this session for all of us. In fact, I think we have all learned so much about not only the topic, but in general, the issues, that we as social science researchers face, the practicalities basically that we face. And what you've mentioned is that's true, that qualitative, research takes a lot of time. And because it is quality, that quality check is also engaged. If you see the number of publications also, ma'am, for social sciences are comparatively lesser as compared to the quantity to the science background. So social sciences have less, and most of them are from the Western, European or South Asian. Very less if you see India centric. And actually, there's a lot of questions that we want to discuss. If we focus on vernacular also publications, we still have, there is so much that can be done about it. But if we just focus from our own country point of view, I'm sure that there are certain limitations that perhaps, as you rightly mentioned, we could talk about it on a different topic and take it up. So thank you once again, ma'am, for coming and taking this session.
Thanks for having me here. Thank you. Bye.
So all right. Now, before we share the link, all the participants, please note that the link for the feedback has been shared by Dr. Asta, and the link for the quiz is also being sent once again for those of you who have missed out in the morning. You can fill it up right now. Please note that only those people who have attended both the sessions, in fact, all the sessions, are eligible to fill the feedback form as well as the quiz. All right. And also, simultaneously, once you've completed, there are two topics that will be put in the chat box. We would request the participants to, on the chat box, to share in bullet points their viewpoints on the topics that have been discussed. There were 3 sessions held today. One was, Dr. Asta, you can write that in the chat box. I'm just mentioning it. So there are, so we had 3 sessions in the morning. The first session was on review of literature for research. I would like all the participants here in the chat box to write down 5 points that they have learned from that session. Likewise, in the second session, we had the topic on research, the difference between research methodology and research methods in social sciences. Again, I would like you all to write down 5 takeaway points that you have learned from Dr. Sheetal Sharma's lecture. Likewise, in the third session, we had Professor Shweta Prasad, a ma'am who talked about reflexivity in qualitative research. What are the 5 points that you have learned from these sessions? So in total, 15 bullet points. I would like all the participants, we have 62 participants, so around 55 of them. I would like all the participants to, either you can upload in the Word format. I would suggest it would be in the Word format would be much better. Or you can write it in the chat box in bullet points. I want all the answers to be completed by it is 3:32 by my watch, by 4:02. So you have half an hour to complete the session, and after that you have time to fill up the quiz and the feedback, and then you may exit. These answers are going to be checked by all the session coordinators here. All right. So we have the attendance also, and we will be checking that. So in total, we have 15 bullet points we would like all the participants to mention in the chat box. You can add an MS Word, or you can write it up in the chat box. Yes, over to you, Dr. Asta.
Ma'am, we can wait for their messages, right? For half an hour. Ma'am, you're not
Ma'am,
audible.
you're muted.
Sorry, sorry. I muted it. Yes, absolutely. They have half an hour's time to write the answers. They can, upload it in Word format, or they can write it in the chat box. And then after photo, they can fill in the feedback and the quiz, and then they may exit.
Okay.